going live?
Okay, going live. All right.
We're good, Mayor.
Okay. Welcome to the regular meeting of Helotes City Council. It's August 11th, 2022. Time is 7 p.m. If you'll go ahead and stand with me for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. The pastor we invited for the invocation had some ministerial duties, so we'll just bow your heads with me. Father God, I just thank you for this opportunity to get together. I thank you for what you have bestowed upon us in our freedoms, and I thank you, Lord, for what that means. And I just pray, Lord God, as we take responsibility for the freedoms you have given us, that we will make good choices, that we will build community, that we will embrace the differences amongst ourselves, but Lord, we will not allow those differences to be divisive. I pray, Lord God, that you give us wisdom and understanding to make good decisions. And I pray, Lord God, that as we seek you, all these things will be added unto us. I pray your blessing upon this meeting. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas,
one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay. At this point, we are having a presentation of some plaques by the Robert F. McDermott American Legion Post 309 in Helotes to this year's Department of Texas 20th District Award recipients. Sir, if you'd like to come up.
All right, if you remember last year, we gave out 2 awards to our EMS and our firefighter of the year. Quentin Rose was firefighter of the year, and Jennifer Harris was the EMS of the year for our post. We sent that on up to the 20th district, who's the next rank up. And then later on, after they were chosen, they were sent to Department of Texas, in which they didn't quite make it to there. And that was my fault because I put the wrong size pictures and they kicked it out because the pictures weren't 5x7s. So I'm sorry, I'm sure you would have won. Now, for those of you who don't know who the American Legion is, we were chartered in 1919 by Congress as a veteran service organization. We have 4 pillars that support our foundation, and those are Veterans Affairs and Rehabilitation, National Defense, Americanism, and Children and Youth. This program that we're giving these out is part of the National Defense Program. And as everybody knows, you guys go into fires, you guys save people, the police go in and not know if they're ever going to come back alive, because when they pull over a car, they don't know who's there in it. And just by hopefully presenting these awards out, it'll bring more of a light to how important you guys' jobs are, and that people still out in this country still appreciate you. Okay? So if I can have Jennifer come up and Quentin come up.
I'm accepting for Jennifer.
Please, Jennifer.
I don't like paralysis in
I'll hold up with her.
All right.
Do that. Big arms around, like the big hug that the American Legion does all the time.
Perfect.
That's all right. Should we photobomb? One more. Congratulations and thank you for your service. All right, at this point, we'll move on to citizens be heard. We have one person signed up. This is Terry Gray. If you want to go ahead and come and state your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes to speak on
Okay, hi, my name is Terry Gray. I live at 11444 Sunset Boulevard. It's on the corner of Malibu and Sunset, and the back of my fence line abuts Brycewood subdivision. I have some pictures that I'd like for you to see, and I gave them to the secretary. Did you receive them yet?
They receive them afterwards. I put them in their box. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay, I thought they could look at them and I could explain them why they looked at them. They can't do that?
Go ahead, flash them to us while you're speaking.
Okay. Picture one, I took a picture of, do you want me to hand them down?
You can, whatever you like.
Okay. Picture one is just a picture of some of the houses of the Brycewood subdivision. I know that 300, approximately 300 have been built so far, and there are 600 left to go. And that's just the approximate picture of a few houses that I stand behind, and I just took a picture of it. If you'll notice the two blank spaces, those, I believe those are plots for future houses also. This area was mostly wooded before, and I didn't bring my magnifying glass, but if you look at those houses, you can see little bitty trees that they planted probably to substitute for all of the trees that were taken out. And I know that the city of Helotes has an arborist. Okay, the second picture, and this one's hard for me to explain, but each of you should get a copy of these. The second picture, these houses are built at the edge of Brycewood. And if you'll notice, when you look at the picture, you'll notice that the backyards are about 10 feet and some of the hill has been taken out. I just thought that was very interesting. That's on the edge of Brycewood. Pictures 3, 4, and 5. 3, 4, and 5. And again, you're going to receive copies of these. These are 3 roads that were stopped before the plats are approved to move on to plat 5, 6, whichever ones haven't been approved in Brycewood. And so you'll notice that the hills, again, are going to be taken out. And at the very top of those hills, there's all kinds of trees, there's all kinds of shrubs, there's all kinds of things that make Helotes what it is. Pictures 6 and 7. I only have 8, I promise. Pictures 6 and 7. Those are the oak trees that are at the gate just behind my house. And it's just a random picture of oak trees. Again, this used to cover everywhere that Brycewood is right now, but it's much cheaper for a developer just to level out all of the trees than to save a few and to build around them. It's difficult for me to understand because that's a bargaining tool for the developer. And if a developer wants some land bad enough, they're going to save trees for us. The last picture is my fence line, of which, according to the plat, they're going to build 3 houses. And there will probably be 2-story houses that will look over my backyard. Please look at the pictures whenever you do receive them and ask yourself if that's what we want Helotes, what we want to represent Helotes. On Twitter, it says that Helotes is surrounded by the beauty of the Texas.
3-minute mark already.
Oh, that was through Mark? Okay.
Thank you.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Our arborist is actually here. If you want to seek out explanation of the tree ordinance and how it works and applies, Josh Mayer is a certified arborist. Thank you for your points. Appreciate your commentary. At this point, we're looking for a motion and a second to to approve our consent agenda, items number 4 and 5, unless there's something that somebody wants to pull.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve consent agenda items 4 and 5.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay, with no discussion needed, all in favor of approving consent agenda items number 4 and 5, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Following will be the mayor's report, which just to give a little update. Recently, we had a blood drive in a partnership with University Health. I believe the roots of this came from, even with obviously the tragedy that happened in Uvalde, and our very own citizen of Helotes, who happened to be the daughter of Councilman Merchant, organized a beautiful response here. We had a prayer vigil and resulting efforts to partner up and do a blood drive, something that I believe we're going to continue on. And we had 15 people sign up with 13 donations. One donation can save up to 3 lives. Obviously, this is not just for people in Uvalde. Obviously, it goes into the system to be able to help countywide. But With those 13 donations, up to 39 lives can be saved. It's incredibly important. I encourage everybody to take part if you can. Our next blood drive will be on Thursday, December 15th, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. right here at Helotes City Hall. At this point, we're looking for a motion and a second to discuss and take action on item number 7 as written.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we discuss and take action on item number 7.
Okay, Merchant, second by
I'll second it.
sir.
This isn't the one, but I liked what I read. I liked what I saw. I'm actually gonna take this and listen to what Mr. Lopez has to say a little later, and go from there. So.
Okay. Is there anybody here that wants to make any clarifications on any items in this, or any questions at all about what this involves? Okay.
I do. One question. What's the fast track permitting program?
It's to basically, we're streamlining here in the city on how to be able to get a permit, you know what I mean? To be able to process and the reviews and so forth. So we ourselves have been already trying to streamline and continue to make sure there's online. And we added a thing where you can now pay everything online. We'll send you a code that you could, before they'd have to come in. It would take days, checks, that type of thing. So we're just internally already streamlining it. I shared that with the board when we had the street action plan. So that became part of theirs, so they can give us input from people that are building, where if there are problems with the city's process and how we can make it better. So we're working together with EDC to ensure that what our process is streamlined, it's customer friendly, it's not really cumbersome to be able to get a permit in here, but yet still follow all the rules and regulations we need to.
So since our election in the last year and a half, we, as you will know, we have made great strides to simplify, expedite, and really make the process as painless for our residents and businesses, while still upholding the crux of what we're trying to protect and the reasons for having the permits in the first place. But a lot of times the time has been cut down significantly, and our fees have been reduced substantially. And this is just a continuation of that.
That was it.
Okay, I beg your pardon, I kind of skipped right over you, Councilman Sanders.
I sat through and they actually were working on this in their workshop. So I really don't have any questions. I think for folks looking at this for the first time, it's very strategic. So it's not going to be pinpoint, we're going to do this. So it's kind of pull back at 30,000 feet. I look at this as their EDC scorecard, right? This is what they want to do this year and the next couple of years. And so this is what we will look at as city council to make sure you guys, are staying focused, which I know you guys will. But that's the way I look at this. And I have no real questions or issues with it.
So, all right. So we do not need, they do not need a public hearing. That's more just on the
Right, this is
budget.
just a strategic action plan for y'all to adopt.
Where's priority 2?
Priority 2 is on the first page. I mean, the second page, it says goal 1, priority 1, priority 2, and then goal 2. Is that what you're looking at?
No, he's got.
Under goal 3,
there's
priority
a
2
typo.
priority 2 is missing. under
Oh,
goal
that's
three.
probably a typo.
Yeah.
It's only- That should have been 2 instead of 3.
No
So
worries.
that's a typo. We'll get that corrected.
No worries. I like it. I was really liking long-term goal number 5. I think Helotes could really benefit from a visitor center, housing, the EDC, the Helotes Area Chamber of Commerce. I think we could really benefit from that.
Certainly. It, of course, includes evaluation, so that would be a.
Yes.
And that's what a lot of these priorities, when the EDCA board looked at it to see, they wanted, if you look at goal number 1, it's surveying and see basically what do we want Helotes to look like, what we want here, and so that we can target those type of businesses and incentivize them to come into the city. So that's the big shift with EDC that I don't think they kind of did it, but they're really now focusing more on that. And with Placer, AI actually even helps because then it shows where our residents are going outside of the city. And so can we attract those people back into the city and spend their dollars here, and support government services?
So I agree. Kind of get a sense that there's a little bit less emphasis on aggressive expansion and more targeted, strategic
Correct.
development to provide the services that people really want, as opposed to necessarily just waiting to see what happens. And so a little bit more directed, focused approach might yield a better long-term product. We do have the president of EDC. If there's any questions, Blaine Lopez is here to specifically answer. If you have any input on that, I'm going to call you up here just to.
Sure. Come up and I'm here to answer questions, and it's just like Mary Ann was saying. So I'm Blaine Lopez. I'm president of the Helotes EDC. Do I have to give my address? No. All right.
Not yet.
Well, good. So normally Glenn, our interim director, would be up here giving the presentation, but Glenn unfortunately is sick, so I got to come in as a pinch hitter for him in the 11th hour, which is great. Very familiar with his plan, and it's kind of what Marion went through. A little bit different. We've had a shift now from our previous strategic plans. We were pandemic on our previous plans, so it was more about retention of businesses we had, making sure doors were stayed open. Now, as we're coming out of the pandemic and we're actually seeing the economy open back up, we're now going to be, just like we said, we're going to be targeted towards trying to find out what people want, what businesses are lacking here in Helotes, and where people in Helotes are going outside of Helotes and spending their money, where maybe they could be here inside of Helotes. So the first part starts with evaluating, surveying, finding out what those items are, and then once we know them, then we can actually start targeting specifically to those. So you'll see it later on. I know we have budget coming up next, but we've actually allocated specific dollars to do that. Other than that, the rest of the strategic plan is still kind of holds true to what our mission is, which is promote our existing businesses. So we're going to keep a lot of our programs that we've had these past couple of years in helping businesses either expand or improve their digital presence or help them out with Google 360, whatever it is that we could help with those businesses that not necessarily maybe can't afford it, but just don't know how to do it, give them the tools to do that. So those are the things that we're going to focus on in these coming years. And obviously we got goal number 5 that was in our last strategic plan that is still there that we're going to pursue. Starts with finding the land, which is actually becoming a challenge in doing this, is finding the right place to put a visitor center. So that's going to be kind of our first challenge that we're going to have to conquer, is figure out where it goes. And then from there, we can start thinking about what it looks like and then obviously what it's going to cost. So a little road ahead of us on that, and that's why it's a long-term goal. But short-term, I think we have a high rate of success of finding some good businesses to come here to Helotes.
The other thing that they're really doing is revamping kind of branding. They would always shop Helotes. They're going to now call it Visit Helotes, because you don't just shop, you're going to do different things. So we actually have that domain, and so it wasn't really being utilized. It was just kind of redirecting to the city website, but now it'll be redirecting to its own website about visiting, and we're working on that. And so that the business can be listed, it can be a map type situation, and they can see, and then there'll be tools in there so they can plan their day in Helotes. So if they don't want to go to Helotes, they put their interest, and it will help them plan their days, give them suggestions of where to go.
Very good. Thank you, Marion. Yeah, that's another inside these goals also embedded is promoting Helotes and try to figure out on the visitor side how to get more visitors here. Obviously, we're going to still do our part in supporting our local festivals that we have, parades, whatever it is that we're doing to try to get people into Helotes and understand what we have to offer here. But we are going to be focused too on figuring out how we can try to promote Helotes. I don't know if we've talked about it or if y'all talked about it in council, but we recently had a filming from Yolo, Texas, that's going to be airing in October. So we'll be looking for that. I think it's going to be a great segment, and we're hoping that's really going to generate a lot of buzz about Helotes. And there's other items that are out there that we're figuring out that are there to help, that are local Texas type publications that we're going to start participating in to try to get more foot traffic here in Helotes.
Correct.
So exciting things I think are going to happen in the coming years, especially again with the pandemic kind of starting to hopefully normalize, that people are going to get out more. And if they're going to get out, we want them to get out over here.
So, agreed. Cynthia?
Yeah, I have a question
Sure.
on goal 4, priorities, advanced local education and workforce development. So I'm looking on here and it just dawned on me, have we ever thought about having, or has the EDC ever sponsored a workforce job fair here in Helotes? The reason I ask that is because that's one of the, in the EDC, municipal code, about the EDC and what you can spend funds for. Workforce employees is a really big thing, trying to retain employees and bring new employees into the businesses.
Yes.
So I know we're always kind of focused on marketing Helotes and bringing people in to spend money, but we should also, the other prong is bringing workers in, people to work here, and good quality people. So I would just like to suggest, I don't see it on here, but you might want to consider the EDC sponsoring a workforce job fair with some of these entities, the Helotes Chamber, other businesses here. They could tell you, yeah, we have job openings. Let them know what's out here, where people can work here.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes, and I do agree that I think some type of job fair would be great. The list that we have here is it's not an exclusive list. I think there's other even sources that we can tap into other than what's on this list. These are what's readily available to us, but I do think there's even broader sources that we could have help us in developing workforce. I think you all know that's part of the problem as we are coming out of this, is that there is a problem with labor. And that's all around, it's not just here in Helotes. So I definitely think if we can promote that, and this is actually a new goal for us that we put in here on the workforce side. So I think that's a great idea. And I think it's something we can implement.
Oh, good.
other than that, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Other than that, I think it's a very good plan, and I did see the shift in focus, and I think y'all have done a really good job putting this together.
Good, thank you. It's definitely it's a team effort with the board. Everybody has great input into this.
Great.
My last comment is, I like the fact that you guys have all these methods now to collect all this data and to be able to share. I mean, some of the stuff that you guys have already produced already that Glenn briefed a couple of meetings ago, I found very insightful.
Yes.
So yeah, this is heading in the right direction. So yeah, it's all good.
Very good. Yeah, and I think as we learn that software more and learn the power of it, I think it's going to get better.
Certainly want to appreciate you, Blaine, for the leadership you brought to EDC. I've heard several comments that have noticed that over this past year of working with City Council, there's been a culture change that we've seen, and really a renewed focus on creative solution finding on your board. And I just think you guys are doing a tremendous job, so I want to commend you and your leadership and your board. For those that don't know, perhaps you know, there has been a little bit of organizational change. If I'm just touch on this briefly. Marion used to be the executive director. There was a little bit of reorganization. She now serves in the capacity of ex officio. So she is the city liaison, and liaison for EDC to the city. She still sits there, but is a non-voting member on that board. So that is why we look to Marion for a lot of information sometimes on EDC issues, because she does sit on that.
Yes, and it's vice versa too. We look to her for information from the council, so it works out great.
Very well. Okay. Thank you, Blaine.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody have any additional questions? If not, all in favor of approving item number 7, seven is written, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. This brings us to item number 8, which will be the presentation and discussion of the proposed fiscal year 2023 City of Helotes Economic Development Corporation operating budget. President Lopez.
All right, so this one we actually have a PowerPoint to go through. So hopefully it's all loaded up.
If it loads up. You exit and try again.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, so this is our 2022-2023 fiscal year budget. As you know, the fiscal year is starting right around the corner here in September. So this is our new budget. And obviously on the front page there, it's not presented by Glenn, it's presented by me. So Glenn obviously put this together, and Marion's also very familiar with it. So I know it well, all the board members know it well. Obviously, this is something that we've approved, so we understand it all, maybe not every detail, that is Glenn and Marion will know. So if there is a question that I don't have the exact answer to, Marion will help me out, I know. So just the budget in general, you know, not to just verbatim read through this, but to just kind of give you an overview of it. So the budget, we try to make it to be consistent with our mission and our vision of the EDC. So that's number one. We want to make sure that everything we have in the budget is identified as something that's in our mission statement. Also, it needs to coincide with our strategic work plan, which just got approved. So everything in the budget also coincides with the work plan. Allocate resources, provide businesses development through effective communication, supporting existing businesses and recruit new businesses. Again, that kind of all rolls back up to our mission statement. And highlight how the allocation of HEDC financial and capital resources are targeted to achieve our established mission vision goals. So this is pretty much just telling you this budget is built upon our mission, built upon our strategic work plan. So just as I know we all know this, but for everybody tuning in live, how the EDC is basically funded, our revenue comes from sales tax. So we receive 1.5% of the sales tax. And if you ever are interested in seeing how those calculations work out, I invite anybody to come by the EDC office and we'll go through all the calculations on it. I actually sat down with Glenn. It's not as simple as it seems. There's quite a bit that goes into the calculating of that 0.5%. For the proposed budget of 3.53 million is projected to be collected by the HEDC from sales tax. So we're projecting to collect just that 3.5 million. And of that 3.5 million, 2 million of it will be remitted in our Chapter 380 agreement. So 3.5 coming in, and we've got 2 million that has to go out per the 380. Okay. This is just a chart showing our projected or our total revenues that we've had from 2011 through what we're predicting through 2022, which is just the end of this month. So as you can see, it's had a significant increase. The reasons for that, I know there's probably questions of like, why is it increased? Well, there's a lot of more shopping. Yeah, it's more sales tax. More people, luckily for right now, the way the laws are written, anybody that is ordering anything online, it's from the point of sale. So online sales that we have through Amazon, as long as it's ordered here in Helotes, we're actually getting no sales tax, which is great. And of course, our 380 agreement with BMC, they're being them associated with the construction industry. Their increase has been great through this time as well. So you can see there's a big increase that we've had over the past 2 years. Even through the pandemic, which unfortunately the pandemic actually kind of helped us in that sense of more people shopping at home. Okay, so you can see there these pie charts are fun because you can see where our revenue comes from. Almost all the pie is sales tax. We do a small sublease to the Helotes Chamber inside of our space, which we make a whopping $4,200 a year, and then we also have interest of what we have in the bank. That we're earning approximately, we're actually estimating earning interest of about $7,000 this year. And we're looking at, just so y'all know, we're looking at ways to increase that interest revenue based upon what we have in the bank. We're looking for other avenues that may be higher interest earning methods. So we're trying to find possibly ways to increase the interest. So this is going to look at our actual 21, what we adopted in 22, what we're projecting through the end of 22, which again is the end of this month, and then what we're proposing in 23. From a personnel standpoint, there's a slight increase with that, which goes along with pretty much what we're feeling, as everybody's feeling across the board, that personnel costs are going up, whether it be through insurance or through pay raises, just to keep up with the inflation rate that we're dealing with right now. You're going to see a big difference in the commodities section. that you see the 2.3 million, and then you also see the big difference in total expenditures. So the way we're looking at doing right now, or in the previous budgets that we did, the 380 agreement, we basically netted out. We said, all right, we have 3.5 million coming in, and we have 2 million going out, so our revenue is 1.5. What we're doing different this year is we want to look at it more as, we want to look at really what is our revenue in total with the total sales tax, and then what we're doing is we're taking the 380 agreement as an expenditure on the bottom line. So it's, here we got the revenue, but then we have the expenditure going out.
Right.
So that's why there's the big flip-flop.
May I ask you a quick question while you're going through there?
Sure.
So I know that will come into play when law dictates the maximum amount you can spend on advertising, for example, as a percentage of your
Right.
revenues. So will this allow us the potential to be able to increase what we
Increase the
spend
marketing.
by accounting for it in this manner, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, and that's,
May I ask you a question about the 380 agreement?
sure,
You
yeah,
said-
I'll answer
how
it
many-
best that I can.
How many do we have?
Just one.
We just have one.
Yeah.
And when is it due to be paid back? Over
Oh.
a 20-year period, right?
Yes, it's
Is it-
20 years and we pay every quarter. So they provide
But you're not
us-
going to pay 2.3
Let me
2.3 million this
bring a
year,
point.
are you?
Yes.
Yes.
Proposing-
You are going to be,
Yes.
that's what you're proposing to pay it off now?
No,
Right.
no, that's actually what we'll owe them. That's based upon the revenue, the tax revenue we're getting in from them. That's how much we have to give them back.
And you pay them every year,
We pay them every quarter.
Quarter.
every quarter?
Yeah.
So essentially, for those that don't know, just bring a little clarification. 380 agreements is an agreement that you can make with businesses to incentivize them to move to your city. So this was a company that did not operate in our city. We got zero tax dollars from them. It was a large company. And so the agreement was that, hey, if you come here to Helotes, we will rebate you a certain percentage of the sales tax, of our portion of the sales tax, right? The state collects all of their sales tax, so there's only 1%, 1.5% that comes to the city. So of that 1.5% that you bring into the city, we'll refund you a portion back. The $2 million is what we're refunding back. So they're bringing in much more than 2 million, we're refunding them back some. So yes, that does go to their bottom line, and that is their incentive to come and do business here. But we thrive as a business. To put it in perspective, this business in total sales tax dollars is 8 times the size of Walmart,
Yeah.
just to give you an idea. So the fact that we're rebating them, yes, it sounds expensive. It is a tremendous, the little bit we have on the, as remaining, still
Yes.
massively injection with very minimal footprint on our city.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand, I understand what you, I
Sure.
understand all of that, but what I don't understand is if this, you say you owe them this much this year, 2 million.
Yeah, we're projecting that we will.
Okay, and last year you only owed them 16,000?
No, no, no.
percent.
So I'm gonna, what happened last year is we changed the way the auditor, so when we wanted our books to look exactly as our audit. So in the audit, it takes it from the revenue net because we cannot use that money. It's obligated out to BMC. The city cannot use that money. They have to pay them back because we have a contract with them. So what we did last year, there is another number. So your FY '22, I was looking at it, there's 2 things missing in there. One is the way we decided to do it is take the 380 out and send it into revenue, but also we paid grant. So there's about $400,000 missing in there, so that total of FY '22 is not correct. You should be able to look in your book and the correct one is there. Also, the total in the proposed FY '23, that is not correct. That total should be $4,063,185 when you add the 3 columns up.
Do you all have the copy of the budget?
Yeah, they have it in their book.
Okay, yeah, so the easiest way to look at it is whenever you look at projected year end,
Which tab
It's
is
the
that?
last tab, which is
yeah, hopefully it's a big one, because I know I printed out 8.5
It's
by
S.
11 and I could not
So-
read it.
behind S.
It's behind S?
So I'm confused. So are we saying the slide is not right?
Correct.
What we're saying is on that slide, 1.8 million, where it says 1.8 million, somebody put a formula in there, I guess Glenn put in, that should have been a sum of all the columns above it, or the lines above it. So it should say that the total capital outlay was, 4 just over $4 million. So, again, what they're doing is they're accounting for what we pay back and listing it under commodities such that our numbers will jive with what the audit requires. Just the same way we handled that last year when we changed the way we did our budget. Instead of showing the total gross tax revenues from our portion of that 3.8 agreement, and then you have to remove some right off the top because it goes back, we just show the net amount. Instead of showing $100, we show the 25, right? And then that way, that's a more accurate representation of what dollars we have to actually work with. And so that makes it, number one, that's one of the reasons why we won an award for best practices last year with our, in our finance department. And
So, and this is based off a percentage, right? So if they bring in an excessive amount of tax, based off of that percentage will drive how much we pay them back.
Correct, right. It's only what they, they don't get a portion of the overall of everything of Helotes. It's only of what they bring in
It's like
sales tax
they
from
get
them.
75% back,
I think it's 75-25, I think is the.
and then we
the
keep the
split.
other. But they
Right,
produce so much,
yes,
that's a win for us.
yes, so every dollar they increase is still beneficial from us.
Right, we're still
Even
getting
though-
25 cents
Even though
a
that
month.
increases what we're paying them back,
25% of the
the more you're
tax
paying
of
them
that
back, the
dollar.
more we actually have. So it's,
Right, yes.
we succeed if they succeed.
Right, yes, we want to pay them back more because that means we're actually getting more. But just to kind of, to show the difference in accounting of what we're doing this year compared to last year, if you look at that last, the one that has the detailed budget on it, you'll see on the very top line, sales tax. So we have a projected year end for this year of 1.7. That 1.7 is actually net, so they netted out the, what we already paid back in the 380. What we decided to do this year is we're actually showing the total sales tax revenue that we're getting, including the total that we're getting in before the 380 kicks in. So that's why there's a big jump from that 1.7 to 3.5 this year. And then if you go down to the very bottom, on the commodities line, if you go about 2 up on the commodities line, you'll see a $2 million number sitting in there, where there's a 0 on the projected year end for this year. So that's that 2 million now coming out. So we just wanted to make sure we were representing correctly about everything we're collecting, and then we're showing everything that then goes back out as part of that 380. That way it's very transparent, and it's not just an unknown of where that 1.7 came from. You know, if somebody actually did a records check on how much sales tax Helotes collected, they'd be like, wait, you did not collect, you know, the EDC shouldn't have got 1.7, it should be closer to 3.5. So we wanted to make sure that that was very transparent about the total that's coming in, including them, and then the 2 million that goes out.
The city does it different because we're not an EDC, number one, but number two is we want to show the net revenue that is actually able to be spent by the city. And so the city does it a little different from EDC. So we actually net out our revenues in the top instead of doing a budget adjustment at the end of the year because we don't know what we're going to pay out. So we net it out saying this is the true budget for the city that can go to services. You know, because we can't really use that extra, what we have to pay BMC out for any kind of city services. So that's why you'll see a difference between EDC and the city.
Both methodologies are acceptable.
Yes.
The reason why EDC does this is it opens up the door because law limits how much EDC can spend on advertising efforts. I believe it's 10%.
It's 10%
of the revenues.
collected.
So if they net it out, they would only be able to do 10% of 1.5 million, 150,000 towards, by doing this methodology, which is also acceptable, it allows them to be able to utilize up to $350,000 towards advertising programs. Not that they will, but it opens that door for things that we've talked about, Helotes Proud, campaigns, visit Helotes, these type of things that might require, when people ask us, why don't we advertise? Well, it's expensive, and this allows us the ability to be able to.
So it kind of goes back to our strategic work plan. This is done purposely to help us in that item of trying to get Helotes businesses, get people into Helotes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have one more last
Sure.
question.
Sure.
I'm looking at the one that you, the big one, second page, under the 380 agreement of reimbursements. So the actual for 2019, 2020 was 606,630. And then there's the budget for 2021 to 2020, there's nothing there. And now it's 2022, so that's what's confusing me. Why is there nothing there?
Because we went from here where we showed it to actually netting it out last year. We made a
Right.
decision to change it back that way, so you can show the actual revenue and not that. But as EDC looked at it, and because of that clause of that 10%, we talked to the auditors and say, hey, even though our CAFR shows a net, can we go back to showing this? And they said, yes, you can, especially for the EDC because of that regulation. So that's why you see a 0. It's actually in the.
It's already in that, it's in that
It's in the
top number.
revenue instead of the
Yes,
expense.
Yes.
correct.
Yeah, it's already
So-
taken out of there.
But, okay, I got it.
Yeah, and that's why there's a big jump in
So-
revenue.
It's
from-
just very confusing.
Yeah, it is, and this is the
Looking at
first year that
this.
we're doing this, and that I knew that that was gonna cause some confusion in there, so. But it's overall a good thing, and I feel better about doing it this way too, because I would like to see it, it's a good way for us to be able to track too, about what is going into that 380 agreement on a year-by-year basis, and now we'll be able to see that running forward,
Yeah, that's important.
yeah.
Bottom line, in the past 3 years, then they will have tripled the size of their business, which is a trend we're seeing with,
Well, no, this is why,
Yeah.
this is why we approved the 380 agreement.
Yeah.
There's nothing,
And
I
I-
have nothing against 380
no,
agreements.
right.
This
That's
one in
great.
particular was one of the best we've ever made.
Yes.
It probably is the best we ever made.
Probably from
Yeah.
all the ones we did that didn't
Yeah.
yield in time, in years gone
Yeah,
by.
so this
Yeah,
is,
they've
this
been
one
a
was so
very-
beneficial to the city, so
Yeah.
I'm just looking at what you have here and I'm just trying to make sense of it,
Yeah,
that's all.
yeah. Yeah, and it's, and I don't know how many years are left on that 380. I don't know the exact year it was entered into.
16, 17, 16.
So yeah, about 16 years, so we've
Okay.
paid for it for about 4 years.
Okay, so time's clicking, but it's a great thing. They're a great asset for the city, and obviously we all hope that they continue to do very well in their business for both them and us, so. Okay, so now we'll move on. Program changes. So these are specific changes we're having to some of our programs for 22, 23. The 150,000 tenant improvement program. So this is, if you don't know, this is actually to help existing tenants finish out or add space. So they actually have to do things that are going to add to their business. So this is for new retail, office, and food beverage based businesses, reimbursable grant up to 50% of the cost not to exceed 20,000. So we have 150,000 in their total. That's 20,000 total or max that you can have per business. So we're planning on, do the math on that. And so you got about 7.5 businesses, I guess, that would fit in there. Now, we came across, we had the same program last year. We didn't use it all. It's possible that we don't use it all again. We'd like to. Obviously, if we get new businesses in here, we'd love to have that as a incentive for them coming in. But, all we can do is put it out there, make sure it's advertised well, make sure it's accessible for people to know. And we're doing our job is to get the word out. So we're hoping that 150,000 will be used. Land acquisition, we have 250,000 in for our land acquisition. That's, again, that could be land acquisition that we're doing from a standpoint of acquiring land, possibly for a new business to come in. It could be something that's a land acquisition associated with the visitor center. So land acquisition is a big item, I think, that we haven't done in a long time. Land is limited, and obviously for us trying to have some control over what businesses we want here in Helotes, controlling the land is the first step. So we will try to identify properties. We did have some identified this past year that we could just not close on for different reasons. Right, of course, the market was much ahead of what appraisals were coming in, which was part of the challenge. But now with the market maybe cooling off a little bit, maybe that will start to even out to where our appraisals will be closer to market value, that we will identify land to buy. And that's within the city limits of Helotes is where we're looking. And then business improvement grant, e-commerce accelerator city program. We have 80,000 in that. So the e-commerce, again, is anything that we can do to help businesses learn how to sell their goods online. So we're working with different businesses. Glenn's more familiar with this program because he's working hand in hand with some businesses that have applied for this. But this is really to help them get their website where they can actually do sales online, which for most of us that are here probably do a lot of online shopping. And a lot of our businesses don't have the ability to do that. So we're working with businesses to do that. We've got $80,000 in that program for that purpose. Visitor Center, we have it there. So we're exploring. We'll continue to look for the right place. The land acquisition number also rolls into that. And, again, once we find the place, then we'll move on to the next steps, which will be some site planning, and then having some understanding of what the architecturals will be like. Art grants, 50,000. We're basically carrying that over from last year. We did put out an arts grant program that we rolled out and advertised. We had one artist that actually applied, and so we're hoping that this next year that we'll actually have more artists that will come in. We're looking at anything. It could be from city art, art.
Two applied.
I'm sorry.
Two applied.
Oh, two applied, sorry. All right. Yes, again, Glenn's much more familiar with the details, but that's as you noticed in our mission statement, quality of life is part of our mission. So obviously arts is, I think, a great quality of life additive that I think we should continue to pursue. And so we'll still be advertising that and still pursuing that of having artists come in and actually come up with proposals to put in some art around the city. So exciting stuff on that end. Targeting business incentives. So this is a big one. This goes with our goal number one, which we did not have this in any of our previous budgets going back. So we put $400,000 in this to be, once we have the survey done, have targeted these specific businesses or know what these businesses are, what people want. And we're going to use that $400,000 as basically, I don't want to call it like a 380 because we're not going to get into that type of scenario, but it will be something that it could be anything from helping them out with impact fees, helping them out with any type of utility extensions that may be necessary for their development. It could be anything from, it could go on and on as far as what can be done to help that business come here. Because where we're coming across is whenever you have these well sought after businesses, there's usually some type of competition for it. Just think about anything like whenever Amazon says, hey, we're going to go build a new plant, everybody puts in their bid, like, please come here, come here. Well, I'm not saying we're going to bring Amazon, but we're going to use this 400,000 for is to go find these businesses that are looking for sites, show them our demographics of how we can support it, and then use this money to actually incentivize them to come here instead of go somewhere else. So again, we hope to use it all. I do not know if we will or not, but we're putting it in the budget to go along with our first goal of our strategic plan. And then again, this hits back on what the change is we have that $2 million now as an expenditure, which we did not have that as an expenditure before. So that's showing up in the 380 agreement. And then last, I don't know if this was really a big change from what we had before.
No, it's
the exact same thing. Okay, so it's not really a change. It's still 50,000 is what we're committing to for the events that you see there, including the marketplace, the Carnival Parade, July 4th, and Christmas Parade. So that's still there in our budget, and we're planning on using that 100% just like we did last year. Capital improvements, so the Lomar, that's a new item that you will see show up in this year that wasn't in previous years. So Lomar is a letter of map revision. That has to deal with the bridge improvements that we did there in Old Town right as you get past Floors. To do that bridge improvement, we had to apply to FEMA to do what we got is a conditional letter of map revision that allowed us to do the improvement. Now we need to perfect that, finish that process off, and actually have the letter of map revision done. And that will actually change the FEMA map to coincide with the improvements we have in there. So right now, if you picked up a FEMA map, it wouldn't even show that what the improvements we did were there. And so the new map will come in and remap that. We're not really gaining back a whole lot of land, but what that does is that does protect us as EDC and as a city as well from any type of lawsuits downstream. If somebody says, hey, this wasn't done correctly, once we have the Lomar done, we'll say this has been blessed by FEMA, maps are changed, and it kind of just gets that process done. It's been hanging out there, and I'm an engineer, so I do not like that hanging out there because I know the liability side of it. And then that's what I was going through right now, completion needed for the pedestrian bridge. And then we have the new one out, the transfer out to the city. So that's our funding agreement that, of course, y'all heard last month. And that's our $325,000 for the year commitment that we have now put into the budget. All right. So The proposed expenditures for fiscal year 22-23 is $4 million, representing a 231% increase from the current year adopted budget. Again, a big, large portion of that increase is because of that $2 million that we're now showing as an expenditure where we did not before.
So Blaine, I know you didn't build those slides, but I would ask Glenn how he came up with that percentage, that 231.
Yeah, and I can get you that number.
It's straight because if you took out the 2 million, you would have been back down to 2,063,000. And
right.
it would have been more of like a 30% increase. So you gotta,
I came up with 106%,
okay.
based off of numbers.
So did you
on-
go
on
from
this slide.
budget? Did you go from budget to budget? You don't go from projection, you go from budget to budget.
That's very possible just because of that
I went
400,000.
from projected last year to projected this year.
No, so
Well, we
this
don't
thing-
know what this year's is,
Yeah,
or what
no.
they're proposing.
so what this is it compares the FY '22 adopted budget to the FY '23 proposed budget. So that's what you're doing, not the projections, because the projections are still running numbers and we're not
Roger that.
positive. So that's where you do the comparison.
That number still seems woefully high to me, compared to our percent.
So
Our
remember-
percent for sales increase
Remember that there's,
is way lower.
so part of it is first of all, the revenues are massively high because of the amazing success we've had over this past year of increased the size of business, and a lot of that had to do with that one particular business. So that gave them the ability to be able to do the debt repayment for the city, which is 325, which wasn't before.
Right.
So you got that 2 million, you got that 300,000, you have the $400,000 project, so that's
That's
you're right,
700.
it is a large number.
Right.
But it's because we've added those additional
Yeah,
programs.
it's probably
that weren't
close
there the
to
year before.
100%, a double of it, just because if you take just those two line items, the 400,000 for new business incentives, and the 325 to the city, that's 725. So that's getting close to doubling up of what we were last year, just in those two line items. Yeah, the rest of the line items, there really hasn't been any significant increases in them. The tenant improvement program is one that we kept the approved budget. And again, of the tenant improvement program, if you look at that line item, we had 150,000 budgeted and we spent 60, but we're budgeting 150,000 again. So we're hoping that will get used.
So I do get that percentage of 231, if you're comparing budget to proposed.
I think I did projected.
Yeah, we don't do projected because they're still working numbers, our year has not ended. So what you do is when you do these type of things, you do it from the adopted budget, what was approved last year.
Yeah. Which we were approved at, last year's approval was at 1.2 million. And so, again, that expenditure does not include that 2 million. So if you threw that in there, let's just say it was 2 million at that time, that'd be 3.2 compared to our 4. So you're off by 8. And so you add in that 400 and that 325, you're at 725 of the $800,000 difference. So they're very comparable. It's just, again, the accounting differences is causing the numbers to get very skewed.
Next year, it will be
Yes.
significantly less because this is, the vast majority of that is due to the accounting change that we're doing. The items are listed in different categories.
Got it.
So that's
Got it.
it's an
So,
extraordinary event that really didn't have actual dollar value change. It's just where it's being reported. And so therefore, this category is high.
yeah. And it kind of goes into the next line items that Glenn has in there. The factors for the increase are the business incentives, so the 400,000, and some additionals that we put in for the programs that we currently have. The 380 agreement, we're showing that now as an expense, and of course, we have that as the increase in sales tax goes on for the business. We'll end up that expenditure will also go up, but also our revenue will go up, so that's a good thing. And then our funding agreement with the city of Helotes is at $325,000 a year. So fund statements. So total revenue for fiscal year 22-23 are projected to be 3.5 million, representing a 224% increase from the current year adopted budget. Again, that's a 224%. Sounds like a crazy number, but of that 3.551 million, increase in revenue. I couldn't give you an exact number of what that is from the 380, but I would imagine that of that 3.55 million, I would think that they're probably at least, well, if we're giving them back 2 million, they're going to be at least
2.6.
Yeah, it's 2.6 in there, 2.7. So the balance, so the big item that we have in there, so to balance the budget, because we have to show a balanced budget to be approved. It has to show a balance of 0. So we have a transfer in. So again, going to that last page, on line item 4061060 under miscellaneous revenue, you'll see transfers in and out. And the last number there is 511,985. So that's representing our projected surplus, which that would be a transfer over into our reserves. So that is what we're projecting as our real surplus to then get down to a balanced budget.
Just a side note that traditionally speaking, I know the city's numbers and the EDC's numbers will be exactly half of this. So I guess I could know that.
Yeah.
But traditionally speaking, for the past dozen years, we'd have about $500,000 to $600,000 a month in sales tax. Starting the month we were elected last May, we broke 700,000 for the first time ever. Continued to go through 800, 900, broke $1 million for the very first time, and now we're up at 1.4 million in a month, which would be 700,000 for EDC. Combined total 2.1 million in revenue. So our businesses over the past year have greater sales than they have in the history of Helotes. Not just this one business, but every single business in Helotes is succeeding greater than they ever have in the past, and we are very thankful for that. So as a result of that, when tax revenue rise up, that's a key factor for their larger increases in their budget on this year for collected sales tax.
Okay, now I'll finish off the presentation, and I'm sure if there's more questions, I'll answer them as best as I can. Okay, so projected EDC fund revenues allocations for current fiscal year, ending in, actually it ends in September 30th. Sorry, I keep on thinking it's August. Projected revenues, beginning balance of 2 million. We have projected revenues of 1.7, projected expenses of 777,000. So our unreserved fund balance of $3 million. Proposed HDD fund balance for 23. We're actually going to get into our reserves, but we have proposed revenues of 3.5, and then proposed expenses of 4 million. Which actually is then going to take our reserve balance down to 2.5. So there are some things that, and again, this is our projected proposed expenses. That $400,000 is in there. Will we use it all? I don't know. Will we use all the $150,000 in tenant improvement program? I don't know. But at this point, we would like to budget the money to be able to do these things, do these items that we think are good for Helotes, even if it is going to put us and a negative of 500,000. Of course, we also have the 325 in our funding agreement with the city factored into that. So we're still financially healthy. If we can do these programs and they're successful, then the idea is that then those businesses are going to generate sales tax that are going to pay future dividends for us in the city. So next steps. Marion is probably more familiar with these than I am. So Marion, you want to go through them?
Yeah. So we have to do public hearings both for EDC as well as for the city. So we put a notice out on July 29th. The first public hearing for the proposed budget is August 17th through EDC, and then it'll come to council for their public hearings, which will be the 25th and the 8th, and then we will adopt on the 21st.
Which is right before the end of the fiscal.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think we asked our questions all the way through, but just in case, any additional information?
I got one question.
Sure.
Going back to that last proposed EDC fund balance for 2023. I just want to make sure, because I see the difference, and that's because of the accounting change where it was minus 777,000
Right.
Right, and that's why then we jumped to this big minus 4 million, just because of the accounting change. So that estimated unreserved fund balance for 9/30/2023, 2518,166. That's net.
That's net.
That is all
That is it.
EDC's money to spend.
Correct.
That will be what we have in our reserve balance at the end of the year.
I just want to make sure.
Assuming the budget plays out. Now, if we experience the same thing that we experienced this last year, if we don't spend it all, that reserve could be higher just because we didn't have enough people apply for the program, or weren't able to find a targeted program to use the developer incentive on. So there could be more reserves whenever we get down to the end of the actual next year's fiscal.
There are two major expenses that also weren't there last year. One of them is the $400,000 for the grant, and then the other one is $325,000 to the city. So
Right.
$725,000 is something that was not budgeted last year also.
Okay, and one other thing, do you guys have your own debt to pay down sometime in the near
Yes.
future? So
Yeah.
that's what these reserves would help buy down?
Yeah, we could. We have to be careful of any type of prepayment. We got a real good interest rate on those, but it could be something that could be used for that. But yeah, just so y'all know what we have debt service in here.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
payment.
it's line item 510-5215, and so that's showing what our debt service payment. So we have $661,000 that we have to pay in our debt service this year.
Okay.
And we're basically in the same time scale, so we've got 12 years. Well, actually, I take that back. Ours is going to run out sooner. Our debt service runs out, I want to say, the next 4 years. I think it's 4 years we have left in our debt service.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
appreciate it. At this point, we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 9. 9 will be the presentation and discussion on a proposed 2023 municipal operating budget and the proposed tax year 2022 ad valorem tax rate. Staff and myself have been working on this. You've heard it in years past as being referred to as the mayor's budget, but Marion has been Tabby, she's back there in the back. Staff has been working relentlessly with each of our division heads. We've been having numerous strategic meetings throughout the past number of months. And what you're about to hear in this presentation represents countless hours of diligent work by our staff, of which Marion has had this up and had her finger on just about every single page written in here. Thank you very much for your efforts and all the division heads that have contributed to this. We'll just go ahead and turn it over. I will say that the first section is my letter to you all that just gives this is under tab A, really giving just some summary of items that you are well versed at, but just giving some specific numbers as a summary. But without dwelling on the summary and then going part by part, we'll just go ahead and turn it over and do part by part. So Marion?
So this presentation basically is a lot that we talked about at the work session, but since this is to the public, that's why I'm doing the presentation. So some of this you will hear. There are some changes because there were still some unknowns when we did the workshop, and then we'll go over those. That there's really only one major change in there. But the proposed budget follows our mission, visions, and goals. It talks about the allocations of resources to the city departments and highlights what those allocations of the city financial and capital resources are targeted to maintain efficiency in our daily operations. On the property tax rate, so we've gotten our certified numbers, and there is an increase in valuation, about 13.4%. Our property tax represents 45% of our revenue, and we still, even with that, have one of the lowest tax rates. The next chart compares that from last year's because the 2022 still hasn't been published because people are still proposing it to council, so they will adopt the same time we adopt. So you'll always see this 1 year behind comparison. The property tax rate has been consistent, and the valuations have increased steadily since 2013, but we've maintained the same rate since 2013. The M&O rate is approximately equal to the M&O rate that was adopted in 2007. The M&O rate is the funds that are used for the actual government services. So your tax rate is divided into two. M&O, that's what the city uses for funds to do city business. The other one is the interest and sinking, and that's what it does to pay our debt off. So that's why there's two rates. It equals the rate that we're proposing. So the next slide explains that. The current tax rate is 0.343979. The no new revenue is 0.32, and the voter approval is 0.31, and we're proposing the 0.31, which is approximately 0.29, almost 3 cents lower than our current tax rate. So in the last couple of years, usually your voter rate is above your no new revenue, but because we've been paying off debt, this big one is because of the litigations. So we don't have that obligation anymore. Our last payment was this fiscal year, and that has caused it to go down by almost a full 3 cents. And that's what we're proposing.
This is a 7% decrease in property taxes for the Helotes City property taxes, what this represents, which I believe is the largest property tax decrease in the history of Helotes. So we're very, very proud to be able to deliver this fantastic news to our homeowners. And just to take a brief second, I know there's a lot of confusion. Well, my property taxes went up. Well, that's because your overall property value went up and valuations hit there, and we have no play on Bear County taxes. We have no play on school district taxes and others. All we are in control of is the Helotes City tax, and our tax rate is going to be decreased to almost 7.3%.
And you'll see on the next slide the comparison from since 2012 to the proposed, and you'll see it was consistent at about 35 cents. Then it went down about almost a cent the last 2 years, a cent one year, and then 0 something cent on the other year. But then this year it's almost a 3 cent decrease. The next slide actually shows the breakup of what is paid. So what is in blue is our M&O tax rate. What is in red is our interest and sinking rate. So our M&O actually decreases. Last year was 28 cents. It's now 27 cents because of the valuations. And then our debt decreased from 6 cents to 4 cents. So that's where the 3 cents comes in. 2 cents in our debt, our interest and sinking, and 1 cent in our M&O, which is our actual revenue for general funds.
And just to throw in also a note, and I apologize for interjecting, but through our agreement with EDC, we have now secured 12 more consecutive years of interest and sinking decreases because we'll be paying off our debt on a scheduled basis. So that assuming no additional debt is taken out, we are set for course for being debt-free, and that portion of property taxes will be systematically eliminated over the next 12 years.
So what also is going to happen is we have some balloon payments coming up in about 4 years. So our payments are like 180. It's going to balloon up to 538. So usually when that happens, you'll see an increase in your taxes, your property taxes to cover that payment. Well, because of the agreement that we have with EDC, we won't have to increase the property taxes to pay that debt payment. So the sales tax will either stay the same or continue to decrease because of that extra payment. Because otherwise you have to make the contract we signed, the agreement we signed when we did the loan that's how you're going to pay that payment. But if we have other funds to pay it, which we found out we can with that agreement, that's how you can leave your taxes lower or decrease them. The property tax freeze in 2022, this year we added 45 more homes to that. This includes disabled veteran, surviving spouse, disabled person, and anyone over 65. We're going to go on to sales tax. Sales tax, currently our sales tax is 8%. 6.25 goes to the state, 1% goes to the city, 0.25 to straight maintenance, and 0.5 goes to economic development. That is how the tax rate is broken down. We're proposing 2.5 projection collected from sales tax. That's the net. That is the net. That is not with the 380. Okay. And we decided to do that so that to us, we feel like that shows a true budget, because that's the only money that can be used for city services. Now, what I can do is at the end of each year in October, give you all a report of what we collected total and then what we paid out in the 380 agreement. We keep a chart that shows that. So we wait till after we pay. It might be a little after October because we have to pay the last quarter. So maybe around November or so, I'll present that so y'all have an idea of exactly, okay, this is the revenue came in, but we're obligated to pay this out to the 380. I think that would show that transparency for y'all. We're projecting 1.2 to go into street maintenance. That is, the 1.2 is not obligated. The street maintenance tax is not obligated on that 380. Only the 1% to the city and the 0.5 to EDC. So the street maintenance, we get the full profit off of that. Nothing gets paid back into 380. They're projecting, and what I put on the 1.5 is the net. So that's what their net projection is for sales tax. Their overall, you add 2 million to that, but their net is 1.5. And then our net for the city general fund is 2.5. The next slide shows the revenue in a pie chart. Our two biggest is property tax and sales tax, between 45 and 30%, and then of course all the other ones make up the total of the 8.2 revenue that we're anticipating. Next slide shows the expenditures. Our two biggest expenditures are our public safety, which is our police at 27, and then our fire and EMS at the 16 and 8. So if you add those up, that is basically almost 50% of our goes to public safety. And then you have building maintenance, development service, public works, and so forth. The next slide shows that breakup of that. Public safety is 58%. Admin, city secretary, HR, mayor, and council is 11. Courts and warrants is 8. The building grounds, IT, I'm sorry, I should have updated that. That's not the 380 because we're paying that out of net, is 9%. Public works is 9. Development services 5. The total percentage is 100. Your next slide does a comparison of what was budgeted in 2000 for this year, what we're estimating as our projections, and then what we're proposing to spend. So the total budgeted was 7.3. We're estimating to spend 6.8, and we're proposing 7.7. Next slide is the city authorized positions. We're comparing what we have right now in the books to 2000 and to 2003. You'll see an increase. You'll see a difference in development services. We're increasing by 1 for our code compliance officer through the ARPA grant. We are proposing to add 2 to public works and 2 to police. And that will be all through the ARPA grant for the next 2 years. After that, it will be absorbed into our general fund. So in our proposal, we're proposing a 7.9% increase in revenue. That's between our property values and our sales tax. And then we're estimating a 5.6 increase in expenses. And that's a lot to do with insurance and COLAs and fuel, electricity, water, gas prices. All that is going up, medical supplies. So that is what that entails. Overall program changes. We are looking to be able to remain competitive in recruiting and retaining qualified staff. We're offering a 5% COLA and a market adjustment to our hourly employees. A lot of employees are making a very low amount, and we're getting them into the market that we did a survey of what people are paying within this area as well as other municipalities. The overall program change also is our healthcare. When I spoke with you last time, I told you that there was an estimate of about 25% increase from our current staff. Met with the insurance broker. We reviewed all options to be able to continue still meet the needs that the staff and also keep the costs down. The bids, we looked at several bids that carriers came above the current 25 or they didn't bid at all for us. And that's just due to some claims and so forth that are coming through. This is the new part. So we're proposing, because it's such a big increase for our employees and we're just doing the 5% COLA, they also have an increase. So if they pay a certain amount, let me give you an example. So if they have employee and spouse. Their current monthly payment out of pocket is already $629. So we're looking at paying, the increase is going to be 157, and we're looking at paying towards that. And that's the monthly, and we're looking at paying towards that $100. So the increase to them is only 57. Some of them, it's like our lowest for another plan that they have is employee and children. Their increase is $63. We're looking at paying the whole 63. So we're saying we'll pay up to $100 to help cover that dependent care coverage. Right now we have 17 employees. We estimated what that would be, which was about 17,000, and then we added another 2,000 for maybe other employees coming in and out, just with the turnover.
And again, this does not pay their co-payment, does not pay their monthly premiums. It just helps offset the increase of premiums that they were going to have to pay for dependents. We have, if I may just take a second here, last year was a massive turnaround city. As we all know, when we took office a year and a half ago, the city's finances were such that we were bare bones at best. We did a tremendous amount of work, and I thank you all of council for the work that was done, policies, strategies, implementations, and working extraordinarily efficient in all our departments, going without, some people left and we didn't replace them. Basically did everything we possibly could. As such, as you are well aware, we have significantly increased the reserves of the city. And while I have some long-term goals for long-term sustainability, I feel that you can't just save every penny for the future, although that's important. It's also important to smell the roses along the way, as it were, and take care of your people to make sure you don't lose them along the way, which is why we looked heavily at some of our lower hourly wages of increasing those significantly. And this is a small dollar item, relatively speaking. It's about $20,000. And we can well afford it in this without moving the needle at all, and provide some much needed relief for our employees. So that's really the nature in which that was given.
Next slide talks about the highlights of the proposed budget. There is an increase in sales tax revenue as well as property valuation, causing an increase in the property tax revenues. Additional staffing paid through ARPA. We talked about what those additional staffings are for fiscal year 23 and 24. Utility costs. Next page, city attorney and prosecutors. They've already submitted an increase in their hourly. They have not been increased since 2007. So now they've come to us with an increase. It's a slight increase. It's not super major, and we feel that we can absorb that and take that in within our budget. Also, the city engineer, they're a third-party contractor. The increase in plan reviews, plats, stormwater, and TIAs, and we're seeing it because of commercial development in the city as well as the ETJ, because we still have to review the plat of an ETJ with the county. We still have to, we're responsible for the TIA and the stormwater. So that is a cost that the city engineers charges us to do that. And you'll see it in the fee schedule, some of the things that I'm looking at to be able to offset that. IT maintenance, estimate 3% increase on all our maintenance agreements. Technology and equipment, the radio tower batteries and replacements for push-to-talk communication within our police and dispatch center. And then fuel cost, vehicle maintenance. Several of our vehicles are no longer under warranty from the manufacturer, so if they break down, we'll have to pay for them, and we're just estimating that on their proposing. And the medical supplies, cost of medical supplies has increased. And so we've put that projection within our proposed budget. Okay, what you're gonna see in the fund balance, and this is, like I said, a year behind. We went from fiscal year 20, it was 1.7 to fiscal year 21 is 3.125. We're estimating it now to go, and those are in months. Now we're estimating it to be almost at 8 months. It's like 7.78 or something like that with this. And the reason I didn't put that because it's not an exact yet until this year's budget closes. So we won't have that exact number, and I don't want to.
We'll reveal those in November-ish once we have the final.
We get the audit. So when you look at the fund balance, it went from 2.7 million to 5.3 million last year, and it's now going to go up significantly from there on the millions. If our estimates are correct. So if you look at your fund balance, what we're estimating to put back into our fund balance is basically, it was 3.4, it's year end. We're projecting revenues of 8 million, department expenditures of 6.4, projected working capital of 1.93, which leaves you, we're asking for a transfer, which would leave us 4.8 million in our actual, from 3 million to 4.8 from last year to this year. That's what we're estimating.
And that does not include what we'll plan on for surplus from this following year, which will put us over to about 5.3 million by September of next year.
Right. So you'll see that. So what we're expecting is this year's, what we're proposing is our fund balance will start at 4.8. That's where we're projecting. Our recommends a fund balance of 1.8, which is 3 months, and our policy says 2 months, which is 1.2. So we're way above the 1.2 or even the 1.8 right now, where we're at a good standing for a city. But they recommend 3 for major cities, but for smaller cities, they actually recommend more months, between about 6 to 8 months, because if something major happens, we don't have the resources that like San Antonio has to be able to continue to make that up, or lay off. San Antonio laid off when this whole COVID happened. They laid off all their hotel and so forth because they weren't getting those revenues. We don't have a big department like that to lay off. Our proposed balance for fiscal year 23 will start off hopefully beginning at 4.8. Proposed revenue is 8.2. Expenses 7.7. The working capital will be 504. That's what's left. And then so the unreserves will go up to 5.3. The other governmental funds, I just highlighted a few of them. Our capital projects, which is our capital replacement plan. We are looking, because that's why we're asking for a $200,000 transfer, is because we're looking at paying off all our lease except our fire truck, so that we won't have these lease payments to pay every year. And so that we know exactly what our fund balance will be. And we talked about that and talked about the 5-year forecast at our workshop. Street maintenance, the big project there is the culverts and some other minor streets. So we're estimating an expenditure of 1 million. That would still leave us a projected balance of 2.1. And the reason we're looking at keeping a lot of that is we're going to have 2 major streets, which is Shanefield and Gom, in the next couple of years. So we need to make sure that we have the monies to be able to do maintenance on those. And then court technology, PEG, and school safety.
So just a quick note on capital projects, particularly vehicles. This just goes along the overriding strategy that I have of wanting to be debt-free. It's good to have capital expenditure funds, obviously, but it's kind of like prepaying for your car. If you put money in savings account and then you can pay cash for your car, you don't have a debt. You're not beholden to the loan. You're not beholden to debt payments that you have to pay. And it's always better as an individual and a family, of course, to be debt-free. And certainly, if we can be a city, we can be debt-free. We can basically prepay for a large purchase expenditures. And so by reworking our finances with that type of mentality, you'll see each year we'll be putting a chunk into capital expenditures to be prepared for when those planned large tickets, such as a fire truck, that
Or
will
an
be
ambulance.
dependent upon long-term financing and saddle future councils with massive debts.
You asked at the work session to put in the future initiatives. These are the requests that did not get placed in the budget, and you all asked us to look at those. So the next ones are all the future initiatives that were requested. The fire department with generator circuits, rewires breathing apparatus compressor, replace lights in the engine room, and then lights in the kitchen for the fire department. The other one is the Knox box security. We do have a grant right now out for that, but we have not heard yet but that is one of the ones that was asked just in case we don't get the grant. And then the foam injection system for our current engine. When it was purchased, they did not actually put a foam injection and said we were going to do it in the future, and that has not been done. The other one, future initiative, is through the participation of strike supported whole blood program. And then the last one is the police department, CID, salary and benefits. And then, of course, the officers. We have a grant out right now for 4 officers, but we will not know until after the budget is adopted if that's going to happen or not. So out of that 504, we do have to kind of remember, if we do get this, 125 will have to go for our obligation of the grant. So that's that portion, but we don't budget it now because we don't have the grant now.
So Marion, are we allowed to ask questions now?
Sure.
So if that falls through, and we'll know in the next 6 or 7 weeks, right? And I don't know what my colleagues would think about this, but since we were already kind of, fencing off $125K potentially, right, to pay those 4 officers for 3 years before then assuming the full cost, would it not make sense that, since we were planned to have some money set aside, that we go ahead and use that money, assuming the grant doesn't happen, to purchase another police officer outright
If
for
that's the
FY23?
yeah, if that's the
Because we're talking about, what, 75K?
Yeah, between 68 to 75. 68 was based on like previous year. It's going to be about 75,000 now with all the raises as well as
Overheads.
overhead.
So, and I propose that because I've been talking to several of the police officers that are actually out on patrol. And so I think there's like 3 I'd call them flights. That's my Air Force terminology.
3 shifts.
Yeah, 3 crews, right? And I think you have one that's 6, there's one that's 5, manned at 5, and then there's one that's manned at 4. If we were able to, and this is just the beginning to help solve that problem, but if we could get 3 officers, 2 through the ARP, the Rescue Act, which we will eventually have to fully fund.
Right.
And then hire one outright, assuming the grant thing fails, we could actually have 6 officers on all 3 shifts to at least start making a bigger presence. It's not the final big number,
Right.
but it might make more of a difference right now as we're working kind of the midterm solutions.
Yes, because either way, if we get the grant, we still have to come back for a budget amendment to, even though we said we will obligate the 125 when we did the resolution, and that's why we keep that capital ready for something like that. But what we would have to do is, if we get it, we have to come back for a budget amendment anyway. If this is the direction that council wants to do and we don't get the grant and then come back for a budget amendment for 1 officer, we're able to do that after we adopt.
Similarly, we've identified needs in the city. We've identified needs of 8 additional police officers and several public works officers. This is the reason why council voted to put sales tax option to the citizens on the November ballot. We don't know if that will be approved or not. It's up to the people to decide. But either way, if we get the grant, we have the 4 officers. The ARPA has 2 officers plus 3 other employees. That will be 7 right there that we would have to pay somehow. So that is the question for the people of Helotes to decide. A great way to be able to pay for those, but we can't budget that. But I fully support, if the grant does not work, we don't get those officers. So we need to at least start chipping away and start adding officers as much as we can. So I'm fully supportive of that, but that would be handled in a amendment one way or the other, and we can be, once we get word, we'll put the appropriate agenda item either to approve the grant reception or to submit for immediate hiring of an additional police officer.
I'd like to interject. With a fund balance next year projected to be $5,362,000, to get 6, if you're saying the officers cost $75,000, and that includes their salary, medical, the whole bit,
Correct.
right?
The whole package.
Times 6 is about $500,000 for 6 officers, $450,000. If you look at the $5,362,000 and you take $450,000 from that, we're still going to have a great fund balance that is about 5 to 6 months. I don't understand why we can't do that. We can't afford the police officers with what we have right now.
No,
So,
absolutely.
so
But
the other thing we also have to remember is we have to buy vehicles for them. So you can't just look at the $75,000. You have to buy a vehicle which is between, it's about 50-something thousand. Yeah, so you have to, so if we're looking at adding these three, we're gonna add already 2 more vehicles, which we did on ARPA. But then if you're adding, we added 2 vehicles for the 2 police officers. If you're gonna add 3 more or something off of our grant.
But they're not all working at the same time.
No, but
They're working different shifts, so I could see where we would need a few more cars, but
they're assigned, basically, a car is assigned to one person for every shift. So that car is being used at every shift. We don't try to, so that we can get the mileage and the idle, we don't do, okay, if you have 1 car, it's gonna be used, if you have 6 cars.
so give me a ballpark figure of how many vehicles and how much it would cost.
So basically, if you're adding, for every
6.
police officer, you need to add a vehicle to.
well, no. For every 3 police officers we had 1 vehicle.
So two more
So
vehicles.
2 more. So if we had
2 more vehicles for what, $100,000?
sure.
Okay, so now we're talking 550. That's still well within our fund balance, leaving us with a nice fund balance. So all this gloom and doom that we have to have a sales tax money to do all of this, I'm sorry, it's just not, it doesn't set well with me. We have the money to pay for police officers. We have a lot, we want public works, we want to have nice, lawn and everything. Let's just divert money to what we really need, if this is what we really need. The last time we had this conversation, you were saying that you were getting calls left and right for people's cars being broken into, and you can't send a cop because there's no cops around. So we obviously have an issue. We need cops, police officers. Well, let's just go ahead and just put them in here.
So let's talk about that just briefly here, because it does have an effect. Oh, go ahead, please, if there was anything.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, as we had discussed, we certainly have the money right now where we could pay for a year. When you add staff and you pay for it out of savings, because we have savings, it reduces your savings. If you don't have the income and the tax revenues to pay for that expenditure the following year, then you have to take that out of savings again. So yes, right now we'd have 5.3, so we'd have actually 4.8 at the end of next year. But the next year we'd have 4.3 or 4.2. Next year we'd have 3.7. The next year we'd have 3.1. And we eventually.
So as your expense.
Not with, because we're going to have a lot more revenue coming in
From where?
every year.
From where?
From property taxes and sales tax. You just talked about the wonderful sales tax we've had over the last, since you became, mayor. My goodness, we've been having this forever.
So you also have to remember that every time the way that you figure out your revenue is you figure out the budgeted expenses. So whatever those budgeted expenses are, as your expenses increase, those months change of your fund balance. So right now, yes, at the previous slide, I think the 4.8, it's 5 months. Okay, but next year, that's not going to be 5 months because your expenses have increased. You're correct. If we continue on an upward for our sales tax and property tax and get those revenues, it does cover some of it. We also need to put money into capital because we need not just police cars. We need to save up for ambulance. We also need to save up for public works. So our capital is not really strong, or capital replacement, unless the direction of council, as in the past, is to lease it out and make payments, and pay an interest on it. That it just depends on what direction you want to go. But I recommend us to definitely really save up for capital because we're going to need an ambulance soon and we're going to need a fire engine soon. And that even the payments just for the fire truck is $63,000.
Just got a fire engine.
We got one, but we have the other one. The other one's over 20 years old. So those are the replacement, because there wasn't a replacement plan for any of our vehicles until I got here. There was not a replacement plan. And so they attempted to start it in 2019, and then when I got here in 2020, we implemented it. Now right now they're on backhaul because of a chip. So we've ordered them in November and still haven't got them into August. So hopefully we're going to get that through. But my recommendations is you need to also look at your capital and those investments as well as this building.
You know, there's a lot of things, as buildings are getting old and so
I
forth.
understand that,
Yeah.
and all this is important. The point I'm trying to make is the rhetoric about how we need these police officers because they're not, we don't have enough to respond to all of the things going on in the city. We need to tone back on that if we're not going to start actually having police officers and hiring them. I'm fine. If we get this grant and hopefully we will, that's 2 police officers.
That's 4.
Four.
4.
That's 4
6.
for this year. I'm talking about this
6,
year.
it would be 6
It'll be
total.
6.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then, yes, we're going to have to pay for it, but the point is we are going to have money to pay for them as time goes on. I know, I've been on council a long time, and I do know that, we have had some downturns, but we've always had a lot of extra money here to do these kind of things. So anyway, I don't like the doomsaying talk. If we don't do this, then this is not going to happen. We have very good police officers. I think we could use more.
Yeah.
But I just don't like this, we can't do this because, we're not going to have the money. And anyway, go ahead.
My recommendation on the grant is to wait for the grant. If we don't get it, then to come back and evaluate how many police officers can we afford to put on, put on 2, 3, 4. I don't, you know what I mean? We'll have to look at that, and then as staff, we'll do a recommendation and then show you how it affects your fund balance and do a 5-year forecast on that.
Yes, and to speak to negative rhetoric, I know in the previous meeting, there were some things, and so we want to make some clarifications. We have police officers that will respond. I want to make sure that there's a clarity on what you brought up. Police officers certainly will respond. What we don't have is the same number of police officers per population. The city of Helotes was expanded by a factor of 100% over the past decade in land square mileage, and we have not added a single police officer. It would be very easy to say we should have doubled the size of the police department, but instead we 0% increased the police department as far as staffing. So the need, where before we used to have somebody driving through every 2 hours through your neighborhood, and they do drive through everybody's neighborhood, now it's once every 12 or 14 hours. And that is the issue that we're trying to address, because when petty crime, which has increased, and thank God we don't have a surge of violent crime, we have a surge of petty crime, which is most directly affected when you have deterrent value of a police officer readily visible in your community, and not just petty theft. Beverly Hills has a tremendous amount of construction trucks that shouldn't be going through there, and they come through there, or speeding and going through and blowing through stop signs in Helotes Crossing, or any number of items of Old Town wishing they had a police officer there because people double park or speeding through Old Town, or people that call and say, well, can you please put a police officer on Bandera Road because people are driving through 70, 75 miles an hour. And the thing is, when you only have, yes, 6 on one shift, 5 on another, 4 on another, but then you have to subtract off vacation and sick leave, and you end up really have only 3 police officers or 4 police officers for the entire city at any given time. So the point is that when we have a budget, and we have a balanced budget with a surplus of 500,000, that's a balanced budget. If we are to add, and right now we're looking at a grant for 4, another grant for 2, plus 2 more public works, plus a CID, or excuse me,
Code enforcement.
Code enforcement, that's 9, that we do not at this point have the budget to pay for those once that grant runs out. So in 2 years, when that grant runs out, we have to come up with, that adds up to $780,000 a year to cover that. Our current budget has 500,000 services. That also does not include, we do have 600 more houses coming in Brycewood, possibly 220 houses coming in the project that's been presented. That's 820 houses, which is roughly 25% increase in houses in the city of Helotes. That would dictate an additional, on top of the 8, an additional 6 more officers just by pro rata share. So the point is that when we take a look at short-term, medium-term, and long-term, we have a short-term ability to address our specific need right now of 8 officers by putting 4 through a grant and 2 through another grant, and 6 right away. We can't pay for those right now unless we go into our reserves and start spending out of our savings. And if we don't have a sales tax, then we have to take a look and realize that whatever that differential will continue each year to go into savings. That puts us on a trajectory of going down. Now, I'm not, you brought it up before, we don't need to continue going up forever. We need to plateau and figure out where the happy medium is, figure out what affects recession, if any, is gonna hurt us, get through that portion, but we have to have a long-term plan, and that's what council voted on, is to put it to the people. Do we want to secure for 1/4% the ability to be able to, in the long term, because it's gonna take 9 months if they approve it before we start seeing any of that sales tax, to be able to be prepared to handle those expenses of the 9 people we're putting in that grant, plus the additional 3 to 5 that we're gonna need once those building projects complete out. And so that's the value of long-term planning and thinking, let's not wait until we're in financial straits to try to push something through and have to do, deficit spend, but instead prepare for sales tax for that to come through and pay for those bills. And what if we don't get that grant? If we don't get that grant, we don't have those 4 police officers, and we can't hire, if we do hire those 4 police officers now and we don't have a sales tax, that will be that $500,000 a year that will continue to come out of our savings. 10 years, we're down to $0. And that's you're banking on even more businesses come, but we are at, as we all know, when we've been dealing with our strategic plan with EDC, to take the focus off of aggressive development, because we don't want to have another 100 and some businesses, which is what we would need all up and down Bandera Road in order to draw those sales taxes in, to fund those 9 plus 6 positions, 15 additional positions.
Of course, I disagree with your numbers, but,
Well-
I understand what you're,
So we will leave it to the people. We're just offering them the opportunity. But what I'm saying is, in the long process here, is that this grant money, at some point, either we do have to have all of a sudden the businesses go even higher than records, and then we'll be able to pay for it, or if the people decide that they want to provide the sales tax, then we can hire those on, and we'll go from that point. But as far as our budget here, the position that you're talking about right now, the 2 are coming on. We do have grants out for 4. The 2 we know we'll get at ARPA. We'll find out shortly about the 4 police officers from the.
We may not get any, and that's my point. And we're 6 weeks out. And I know dealing in fiscal grants and stuff in my full-time job, if you don't know by this point in time, it's probably not gonna happen. So, and all I was suggesting was, since we had already kind of earmarked that 25% that we would have to pay for those 4 officers, that money be utilized to hire a cop outright. We can immediately we can have full 3 shifts with 6 officers, and we'll have 2 new vehicles to add to the fleet, while we're figuring out the mid to long-term solutions that the mayor mentioned. We can actually put 4 patrols out. I dare say we only had 2 patrols out on one of the shifts the other day. 2 out of all of this area. So getting us to 4 to me is a small victory, while we work out the long-term sustainment of a much larger workforce.
And what we can do is, like, let's say we hear before our adoption on the 21st, that can be a change that I present, you know what I mean, with your direction tonight, saying, okay, if you don't get the grant, please, put in this much. If we don't hear, or the deadlines after that, or y'all make a decision, then we can come the first meeting in October and do a budget amendment, you know what I mean? And then as soon as that's done, we can advertise.
when are we gonna find out about?
We're supposed to find out at the end of September. I don't have the exact date of it. The police department has that. I didn't bring that with me, but I want to say it's like the 27th or something like that. But
So it's
usually
at the very end.
it is, but usually if we're not hearing by the 20, you know what I mean? We can actually reach out. Sometimes you hear the denials before you hear the acceptance. You're like, you didn't make it to the next step and so forth. So sometimes if it's a denial, we'll hear it even before the end date of the award.
At any rate, and this goes to Councilmember McCrossan's point last meeting, if we don't get the grant, then we will in fact have a projected $500,000 surplus, of which we can certainly address and hire police officers immediately utilizing that, and we'll certainly push that agenda item for your consideration. If we do get the grant, then we know that we won't actually have 500,000 because we have to pull out 125 for the grant plus 100 for the cars, and we'll be left with the 250, which is pretty slim to deal with whatever potential effects of.
And you want to have something because you don't know if you're going to meet all your projected revenues. This is a proposed budget. We did a lot of analyzing, Tabby and I, with all the department heads to see, okay, what has the trend been in the last 5 years to propose this. So there has been times where the city has proposed a higher or proposed a certain revenue and we did not meet it. In 2019, that was one of it. And so we were $300,000 short in our budget. So I don't want to, as your city administrator, I don't want to propose a budget where you don't have that leeway to be able to, just in case you don't meet your proposed. Of course, we'll always look at our expenses and start cutting down, but there's certain expenses we can't cut down, unless we're laying off employees or, but there's gas, electricity, all that stuff that's just a set thing that's already on there. So I don't ever recommend to have just a zero budget because otherwise I might have to come back and ask you to take it out of reserves.
But to that end, if we get to a point where we have excessive savings, as you and I have talked about before, I'm all for presenting that to council to say, hey, listen, let's say we make it through this recession and we come out the other side with 7 months worth of reserves, great, and we decide, you know what, we want to stay with 6. We can take a look at that extra month of reserve and say, let's take that and pay down our M&O tax rate. And now we've further reduced people's property taxes and basically do what we should be doing, give it back to the people in the form of better management and to
I
maintain
think
the lower.
that
So I'm in full in favor of that.
I think that people would like police protection, even more than their, $50 on back a year.
I agree, which is why I'm trying to get them a significant addition to the police, but we can't just pay for it out of savings, otherwise savings goes zero.
No,
So we
well,
have to have
I guess-
we have to have a plan. We can't just.
I understand that, but is this 8 months of revenue in our general fund after your projection?
That proposal is for the end of 2023.
2023, that's what I'm
Right,
saying.
right.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm talking about next year's budget.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
not this year's budget. I'm talking about next year's. So this is about 8 months in reserves.
It's like 7.78, yes.
7.78. And, and I think that 6 months is sufficient. And in fact, I think 5 months is sufficient, but according to the law, was it 2 months is sufficient?
Yeah,
But I understand, we're a smaller city, whatever. But I always, when people pay taxes, they expect their taxes to be used to help them.
Right.
Now, not 20 years from now when they're dead, okay? Now. So that's why I have this thing about savings accounts. This is reserve fund. It's not really a savings account. It belongs to the people. They pay taxes. They expect to be taken care of, especially for police protection. So this is why I'm saying this.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
and absolutely, I think we're all in agreement. We've stated that all over there. It's a need to hire these as fast as possible. We have a way to be able to grant for 6 police officers right now, but if that doesn't come through and only 2 come through, if we hire without, it is reasonable to say, okay, if the citizens approve sales tax, we know that's coming, and then we can hire knowing that's coming. It's unreasonable to say that, well, we'll pay for it because revenues will grow in the future somehow without any specific
Okay.
project tied to it.
Well, there's plenty I can give you one, the Quick Trip.
The Quick Trip certainly will be on there.
This
without a doubt.
new commercial development with all these different businesses that are coming
Our
up next to the
expected-
church. Our new, you just mentioned Briceway
Actually,
and all of that.
those
That's
are not
600.
in the city.
We also have property taxes.
Yes,
they are.
yeah, we will see increase, and that's why I said,
This is not the same.
I
I'm
like
not
to
talking about the
present,
business. I'm talking about the one next to the church right here on Bandera
Across from
Road.
O'Connor.
What?
From,
which,
Where Apple Pest Control is.
oh, okay, Apple
Yes,
Crest Control,
yes.
yes, okay, yes.
Yes, we do have some nice commercial development and.
We do, and we're,
all of the property
yeah,
taxes,
and we'll
so
see
we
that
have
in fiscal '24.
No, I'm not, this isn't
Yeah.
just a pie in the sky. I'm just grabbing money from nowhere. There's money coming in.
Correct.
Yeah,
And
and we'll have a better idea of
have an
what that
economic
money,
development corporation is supposedly working to bring more business, the kind of appropriate businesses.
Correct.
So, again, I looked at things in a more optimistic way, I always have. It's served me well, and it served me well in the city. So, anyway, I think we understand each other. We're gonna accept this budget and look at an amendment in case we don't get the
Yeah, and we'll
grant.
have to do an amendment either way. If we get the grant, we'll have to do an amendment for the 125. If we don't get the grant, then if the recommendation is to come back, and which I totally support that recommendation, is to come back to add the police officers from those reserves, because we're not having to obligate that amount to a grant. And I missed one slide at the end. We do have another future initiative when I talk about putting money into our capital projects, the flood maintenance system, which is the HALT system. They're saying FY '26, but I don't know if that's still the case. Has it gone further out?
We haven't had an update.
Okay, so as of right now, that's another 185,000. So we have to make sure we have that in capital, as well as maintaining the vehicles and a replacement plan for the vehicles. So there are some future things that are coming up that we need to ensure that there are money in our capital reserves also. That's very important. The next steps, we'll have a public hearing. It's been advertised, and we'll have a public hearing on the 25th and the 8th for the proposed budget. We don't need to do a public hearing for the taxes because we're not going over the voter approval rate, and we're looking at adoption on the 22nd for both the proposed budget and the tax rate. Is there any other questions, concerns about the budget itself?
Yes.
Okay.
So at any point throughout next year, when we get our quarterly reports, would that also be an appropriate time to do a budget amendment?
Yes.
And say we have funding to add another officer?
Exactly.
Okay, absolutely.
If we see it, and what I recommend is to go a couple of quarters so you can see the trend instead of just doing the first quarter, between the second and third quarter, so that we do see that trend and ensure that it is still at that rate. By then, we'll have a good, almost a full year of this, because what happened was the one company we talked about was actually bought out and they brought in product, and that's why we're seeing this. Well, we'll have a 1 year worth of stats because we don't have that right now. So it looks great now, but I don't know if that's going to continue. So my thing is that, and plus by then we'll know if they're going to put the bill out again as they did last year to, instead of being charged the sales tax from where the company is, it's where it's going to be delivered. And so that might also hurt us. So if that bill passes, then that would drastically hurt us, because BMC actually sends out their product to somewhere else. So I recommend not until we're around there, because then we'll have 1 year worth of data, as well as if this bill is going to be put on the table.
Okay. And then in terms of the health insurance offsetting for the employees, is that set up so it's going to the carrier? So the
Yes, it's going to the
employees
carrier,
tax?
yes. It's not going to the employee, it's going to the carrier, so that they're not billed. What if it's 63, it's that whole 63. If it's 181, they'll just be billed the 81,
Okay.
not the 181.
And then for future planning purposes, since we saw a $45,000 increase with the city engineer contractor, from your experience over at Alamo Heights and just with your network in general, at what point should council now or future
So
be
that,
prepared?
that increase is not due to fees. They have not increased their fees for many years. That increase is because they're having to review plats.
Oh, no. I mean, to consider, yeah,
Oh, to having it here, that amount.
like a hurdle rate for that?
Yeah, we would have to look at that, because, and see if it's more feasible by next year when we're looking at this increase. We'll see if, because I think right now, with that 45 increase, let me see, let me look at it. I'll tell you what the total amount that we pay out. So currently, so we pay out in city engineer is 85,000. So right now, I'm going to tell you, we will not get a certified engineer with benefits and that
Yeah.
cost for that amount. So when it gets to that point where we're paying out what we could get for a full-time engineer, then that's definitely a recommendation I will bring to council.
It's also something to consider, because I'm fully on board with what you're talking about. It's the same thing conceptually when I talk about healthcare. At some point, we need to take a look about becoming self-insured when the cost of being self-insured is less than what our premiums are paying. At this point, that's not the case, so we're forced to have to deal with the realities of what market pricing is. Yes, we're increasing now, and we have a fair amount of projects and plats and reviews going on, but as we have discussed, we're not expanding development at an increasing rate. We're actually decreasing and kind of closing in and filling out our envelope. So trajectory, we'll probably be using less and less each year. So the model of being able to PR, as needed. I forgot the 3 initial there for that. My wife does that. PRN, thank you. Is actually financially beneficial to us, at least certainly at this point, but it's something we definitely will take a look at if it crosses that hurdle.
Yes.
Okay.
I have one question.
Sure.
Are we still doing the supplemental thing, or are we
Yes.
having to start over
We are
from
still doing,
scratch?
we are still doing the supplemental, so we're doing our insurance as well as the urgent and emergency care supplemental.
So just a quick word on that. Last year's massive overhaul of our healthcare and kind of redefining things has proved to be extremely beneficial. We have had some unfortunate claims that were just individual claims, and that happens. But the net result is, even with this year's price increases due to the work that we did with that subscription service, our price is still less than what we would have been last year's pricing. So we are way ahead of the game as far as that goes, and so that was a good move on the city's part. But nonetheless, they are being faced, our employees are being faced, and of course, we have that $20,000 are allocated towards helping offset employees' contributions.
That's it for my presentation.
Okay.
Oh, is it this one?
No, it's going to be next one. So that's the end of the presentation of our
Yeah.
budget. So we'll now move on to item number 10. Looking for motion in a second to discuss and take action on item number 10 is written.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to discuss and take action on item
Second.
number 10.
Second by,
I'll second that.
okay, so of course, this is just really to set the date of when we're going to adopt the proposed tax rate, which will be on Thursday, September 22nd. Don't know if there's really that much discussion to be had, but if you have anything,
Kind of
Councilman,
trying to move it along.
anybody? No? Okay, with no further discussion, all in favor of approving item?
On the tax rate, you actually have to do action required, because you have to set the M&O. And so I believe it's,
We're declaring it now, or we have to have the,
We have to set the tax.
you have
rate.
to set the tax rate that you're proposing. You're not
You're
adopting
proposing.
it, but you're setting it to
beg your
propose.
pardon, I thought we were still doing a public hearing on that day as well, but that will be on the budget.
You're doing both.
Both.
Both of them on
So
that day.
you're setting the rate and then you're also
So
setting the dates.
the motion that we're looking for, Mr. Merchant, would be to
For the-
adopt the proposed tax rate of 0.316778, if that is a.
I concur.
Yeah, and so the thing is,
If agreed, say so amended.
So
also,
amended.
and an M&O rate
And an M&O rate of
0.273,
0.273,
070,
070,
and an INS rate,
and an INS rate of
You wanna- you want- is it up there?
0.0430708
yeah,
for a tax rate of 0.316778.
correct.
Very good. I like that.
Secondly, you so amend that?
Second that.
Okay. There we go. Now it's read into record.
Need a vote on that one?
Is that the one where you have to, each person has to?
A roll call,
Call vote?
Not until we actually.
Not
Not until we
yeah,
actually,
Okay.
So any nays?
so, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The second one you are doing is setting the public hearing.
So this will be setting a public hearing. We're going to have a discussion and action on setting the public hearings for the municipal operating budget for fiscal
No,
year
no, no,
20.
this is also for the, oh yeah, we're not doing a public hearing for taxes, right? Sorry.
No,
Sorry.
We're on to item number 11. So looking for a motion in a second to discuss and take action on setting the public hearings. This will be for the 2023 municipal operating budget and the 2023 City of Helotes Economic Development Corporation. This will be on Thursday, August 25th, 2022, and Thursday, September 8th, of 2022 at 7 PM here at City Hall Chambers. Motion by,
I'll move that we have these hearings as stated on the caption, Thursday, August 25th and Thursday, September the 8th.
okay, motion by Massey, second by
I'll second it.
Sanders. Okay, any additional discussion? These are just setting the 2 dates for the public hearings. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Final item is item number 12, which will be the presentation and discussion of the proposed 2023 municipal fee schedule.
So we reviewed the fee schedule and we made a couple of suggestions for increases on some of them or adding new ones based on departments. The first one that you'll see is the alarm system. We don't have a permit for alarm system, and so spoke with both police and fire. And so we don't have a list of what houses or what businesses actually have an alarm. We don't know until we get a false alarm call. So this is a way so that we can track. So if a police officer or a firefighter is going into that building, they know that there, is an alarm, that we know we have an alarm at those properties, okay? So they asked us to add that. It would be basically a $25 annual for residential and $100 for non-residential, which is commercial. And then the false alarms, the first 3, there will be, in a calendar year, there is no cost. After that, it is $50 from 4 to 5, $75 from 6 to 7, $100 from anything 8 and above. For businesses, the first 2, there's no fee. After that, there's a fee of $100 from 3 to 5. And we do have some businesses that constantly, we have false alarms, and our police have to go over there.
And I can speak to that. There's, in San Antonio, we make a lot of them, and it often has to do with often it's commercial, 98% of the time, and it has to do with just not failing to provide proper maintenance on it. And so if a business puts it in there and keeps the maintenance and does what they're supposed to, they won't be ever seeing any of these fees.
And then the next page is 6 to 10 is 150, 11 plus is 200.
Sure.
See, I thought the city had this in place.
We
because-
just had some false alarm, but it was only for commercial. We didn't have anything for
Right, so-
residential, and then we didn't have anything where you have to
'Cause
pull a permit.
Iron Horse Canyons Homeowners Association Rec Center has motion sensors set up. So who's monitoring the motion sensors after hours? Totalcom is the name of the company. They call it the dispatch, and dispatches a cop up there. And I've heard some of these numbers before. After so many of those, we start getting billed.
Yes, yes.
We're dealing with false alarms here, so if,
It would be a false alarm if
no.
if somebody shows up and there's no burglar there.
No, that's not a false alarm. That's alarm set off by motion detector, people being there and them leaving. What we're talking about here is that the fire alarm goes off, saying that there's a fire, and there's no fire. It's because of system malfunction. So you're talking about system malfunctions, not actually tripped.
This just says burglary, so it's not just fire.
These are burglaries.
Anyways,
So there is some that they do malfunction. They're on in the middle of the day, or they didn't, and it trips, and it's not a true alarm.
yeah, like
Yes.
ours.
I'm looking on there, this
Often
is
it's
false
it's
alarms.
It's a rabbit that sets it off, and HPD shows up, and there's no burglar.
It's the rabbit's fault.
That's a permit fee. The permit fee is for the alarm systems and burglary. Then you got false alarms. False alarms can be defined. So we may have to define that.
Yes, and
That'd
we're
be a
gonna-
false
if
alarm due
y'all-
to malfunction
If
and
y'all
not
approve this, we're
burglary.
gonna bring an ordinance to you, because we don't have an ordinance right now within our code that addresses this. So I didn't want to put the cart before the horse, you know what I mean? So I wanted to see if this is a direction, and then we'll write the ordinance, because this won't go into effect till October, so we have time to present that ordinance to you, so y'all can look at it, and then, so those definitions, all that information will be within that ordinance.
So this is an issue in the
It
city.
is an issue.
For the
mhm,
police
for the
and
police
fire.
And fire, and they asked us to look at this.
Okay.
We can look at separate fire fees.
Well, I think what we can do, and maybe what we'll do when we bring this back to you, is we'll define, I know you've got burglary up there in the systems, but that's for permit fees. Then you have false alarms. So if somebody's breaking your house and you call the police, and when police get there, the burglar's not there, that's not a false alarm. Something happened. So if your alarm goes off, because you're sitting there watching the TV and the burglar goes off just because your wiring's faulty or the battery went bad, that's a false alarm.
Right.
So what we can do is we can define that in the
Yeah.
terminology of the list and define what constitutes a false alarm that's billable and what's a non-billable false alarm.
Well, I guess my point I'm bringing up is, did I bring up an anecdotal example of a motion sensor system with somebody that if the sensor goes off, that even if they don't actually see somebody, they could call HPD. HPD shows up to
Yes.
verify that it's not a burglar, it's not anything. If that's not covered in here, and if this is a one-off Iron Horse Canyon thing, then disregard.
But if your motion
But if
sensor
it-
just
if there's
constantly goes
other-
off and there's no real motion, you know what I mean? Let's say it's gone off several times and you haven't checked to make sure, but, or let's say you did check and say, my motion sensor is working properly, someone did trigger it, those aren't false alarms. We will define that in the ordinance, but if, let's say, it keeps triggering and you never go and check to see if it's a malfunction, then those can be considered false alarms after a while, because the owner didn't take, it's their responsibility to make sure their system's working properly, you know?
We had one where it was triggered, it was wired. We found one at an apartment complex where the alarm system was set up, and for some reason it was wired to the light switch in the bathroom. So every time somebody turned the light switch on,
It would
it sent
turn
an
it on.
alarm. All
I
right,
see where this.
so that is different than
Yeah.
somebody broke in and they're not there, or somebody was messing with your car and the alarm set off. Okay, so we will do a good job of trying
Yes,
to
we will.
define that.
Great
so that-
example.
So that the intent here is embraced and not.
It's more
yeah.
mechanical. Okay.
So can I get in, or are we gonna wait to the end for questions on all of these?
Go ahead, if it's about that fee, go ahead.
Yeah, so in terms of the fee, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole in terms of our dispatch center, but hypothetically, if we no longer have a dispatch center, the fees here for, false alarms, is there going to be any charge from Bear County? Do we know, I mean, you work in, I say, fire, is there like a charge going through, or passed on to us if it's false?
No,
Okay.
dispatch is handled by the number of calls that come in. So false calls will count towards that because they're dispatching police. But that goes to the overall contract of how many calls that they are servicing us.
Okay.
But the fee would be actually because
Our
the police
personnel.
department or the fire department were sent out. So wear and tear, unnecessary wear and tear on the apparatus, which is, $14 a mile on a fire truck. That's what it costs to run, not counting labor, right? So, and that's what it covers. So that's why you give some freebies, because of, that's.
And these
whatever.
numbers-
Burnt toast, somebody's burned it and sent off a fire alarm, and there comes there, sorry, I burnt my breakfast.
Yeah, and
Your
these,
first two or
you
three.
can't exceed a certain amount. You have to, by state law, you have to follow, like, you have to be able to give so many false alarms, the 3 false alarms. You can't exceed a certain false alarm fee. So we actually looked at that and followed the state code for that.
Okay.
Marion, under the permit fees, it says residential 25 annual, non-resident business $100 annual. How do you know who has, since this is something new, how do you know?
We will get the information out, and it's their responsibility. So if an alarm comes up and you haven't registered, the first time we'll tell you, you probably weren't aware of this, here, you need to register your alarm. If it continues, and we've already told them they need to register their alarm, and they continue to not register their alarm, then at that point, there's different fees on there that shows that you get charged for that because you don't have an alarm system.
So any resident with an alarm is going to pay a $25 fee to the city of Helotes for the service of being connected.
Correct.
Okay.
Right,
and-
being
and
connected.
self-reporting.
Right.
Okay.
Because then you're connected, and that company calls our dispatch or calls our police to go out there to be able to, and then we have a list of those houses.
What if you have an alarm system that's not attached?
That's not monitored?
Is not
Well, then
monitored.
we wouldn't get the phone call, and that doesn't qualify. It's the ones that are monitored. So if you have one that you bought at Best Buy that just tells you about it, You know what I mean?
Like a ring.
Or like a ring or something, that's different because that's you going and checking and so forth. And by then you'll go call the police and, because you saw somebody or someone broke in. If it's monitored, they automatically call dispatch to send a patrol or a fire out there, depending on what alarm.
You might want to put monitored alarm system
Okay.
somewhere in this ordinance.
We can do
so
that.
People would understand that.
Just as a suggestion, when we talked about this last year and we got the numbers of what dispatch was going out, it was prompted because ADT sent me a letter
Right.
saying that I need to register with Bear County. And then, we went through the whole numbers with all that. So somehow they knew that Bear County requires it. So just a suggestion.
Yes, we
They got-
will let all the different companies, vendors know that this has gone into effect. We also have to publicize it and make it public in the newspaper and then post it out on our website so people know, and then also give a time frame, you know what I mean, so that if you get so many within this time frame, it's not going to go against your false alarms or anything else.
Oh, and on that same note, the peddler permits for all those new alarm system companies too, coming around, maybe just a suggestion, letting them know that they need to pull a permit as well.
Yeah, we can send that out when we send this one out.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay. So the next set, I think it's permits? No, it's
Oh, animal.
animal control. That is just a
Boarding,
pass-through.
daily boarding.
Yes, that's a pass-through that y'all approved with Days of Allah and the contract, and so that's why it's increasing because of their fees.
And the next one.
Traffic impact analysis and review. That
So
went up
that's
quite
a
bit.
huge one, and the reason it's going up is that we've had it, so there are different things that the engineers look. If it's one, they're just reviewing the sheet, making sure that they don't have to. If it's level 2, it's more intense, there's more time, and then level 3. These are for major developers that are developing, not just in the city, but on our ETJ. So we were getting a lot of development in our ETJ, and all we're charging is $440. Oh, I'm sorry, we're charging like $600. But when we get the bill from the engineers, it's close to between $1,000 to $1,700, depending on the piece of property on level 2,
Yeah.
on level 3, and that's why we went with those by comparison to what we're being billed by our engineers. And then we also looked at other cities, and these are still lower than our surrounding cities.
Okay.
Marion, under administrative fees, we still use audio cassettes and VHS under the fees.
That's a state fee.
That's a state fee.
So we still use that technology?
We don't,
But
but
the state has it recorded as a fee.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't.
These beta.
The newspaper notice, and plan unit development.
Maybe.
So we do still have to do newspaper notifications when we do public hearings, and we use the Express News for that. So that fee is based off of what it's costing the city plus administrative to be able to publicize those things. So we have been doing it and not charging our developers. So when you're doing a zoning change, or if you're doing what's the other one?
A city council conditional use permit.
Yeah,
And
an
I can
SUP.
actually speak to that, council member Massey. That is just the minimum flat rate. Sometimes depending on the nature of what needs to be published, the newspaper charges, I think it's like almost $15 per line. So if it's a lengthy thing that applicant is asking for, it could go well into close to $500. So we're not profiting off of that.
No.
And the plan unit development.
So the PUD, we didn't have a PUD fee. So when
We didn't?
No.
And they didn't go under any other,
So we found a few things that they could go under, but it's not what, so when we looked at other cities that have PUD and have PUD fees, these are still even lower. Like one city charges $1,000 plus $25 an acre, or $2,500 plus, you know what I mean? So they're charging a lot more. So we looked at, because it takes a lot of time. So when a PUD application comes in, our engineers are looking at it, our building officials looking at it, our fire marshal's looking at it, our arborist is looking at it, I'm looking at it, development services. So it takes 6 different people to look at this fully engineered plan to make sure that it meets all the requirements of a PUD.
what about the other, don't we pay, I mean, I'm thinking about the housing development or the other developments when they come in.
Yeah, they're paying for when,
house.
So they've
for a
never,
house.
so these people who are coming in for the plan unit developments have never paid any kind of.
We've never had,
fees?
we've never
Never had
actually
one.
had a PUD,
The
we've
only
just had
one we
one.
have is
one-
about to apply.
Yeah,
So we,
Is this retroactive?
no,
they haven't applied yet.
yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
good.
they haven't applied yet.
haven't
They just
applied
came and did a presentation for you.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so they haven't applied yet.
We've never had a PUD, so there's never been a need for a PUD fee. It's kind of like, not having an internet tax because before there was ever internet, just, then once you have it, well, this is the first time we've ever been approached, and they haven't applied yet. So it's not,
I don't know,
it's not
we
a
do
case of.
have some
Townhomes,
PUDs. In
townhomes.
Cedar Springs?
We have subdivision type of.
Subdivision,
Yeah, but
PUDs.
those are
Not a
not
mixed
actual
use.
PUDs. PUDs are basically where you have a piece of land and you have residential, commercial.
Mixed
and-
use.
Yes, mixed use on it,
That's what
yes.
you're calling it?
Yes, that's what a PUD is.
Okay, because I thought that like these subdivisions.
No, so like Brycewood or when Iron Horse was done or when Cedar Springs was done, you had a master developer come in there. They had overall general fees for reviewing and plat, but then
Right.
each individual house had its own fees attached to each house. And so that's where that kind of falls under that.
Right.
So this, a PUD is a completely different thing. It's a master plan, essentially mixed use, and so we've never
You
really
think you
had
should
that.
put mixed use on there?
Well, no, it's because it falls under technically a
No,
PUD.
it defines it as a PUD.
A PUD
Yes.
is already defined that way?
Yes,
Okay.
it is defined, but we didn't have fees attached to it.
Okay. And I think it's reasonable to kind of start low and see what happens. I
Well,
mean,
we don't anticipate very many.
We
Like,
don't.
This is the only one, so there's really no place to put them, or I don't know, somebody had to get really creative, I guess, but at least this way that covers our cost of having to do, that's a lot of reviewing that goes on.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
So our plat fee review, right now, we charge a flat rate of 500, and that does not cover, we had one just in our ETJ that was 1,500. Because they have to review it and give their notes to Bear County. So all we're asking for is what is a pass-through fee from our engineers, a consultant fee, plus 5% administration, because we do take it in, we review it, make sure they have everything, and then send it out to our engineers, and then communicate with the developers of what our engineers are asking for. So it's just basically just to cover our cost. And especially in our ETJ, because we don't get any taxes, property taxes or sales tax, and so our citizens are ended up paying for that development, for that review. So that our citizens and residents aren't paying for, we're just doing a pass-through with 5% administration. So the peddler permit, this is what actually, like you talked about, so police looked at it, looked at other cities, and this is what they're recommending, just leaving the temporary one at just rounding it up to 63 and the annual to increase it to 126. The other one is the booth at Old Town. We're looking at increasing it just because, we looked at all the different marketplaces around town and everything we offer. We offer electricity, we offer, we allow so many vendors, just everything we offer. We also offer them to be able to sign up and keep the booth reoccurring, and automatically. No other vendor actually, they charge them to do that. If you want to do that, you have to pay another $15 or $20 to continue to be reoccurring per month, not even just an annual. So we're looking at increasing it to 55.
Most market areas are 75,
Yeah.
95, et cetera, so what this also does is helps offset some handful of vendors that may not be properly reporting their sales tax in the first place, right? So when we're taking a look at these things, it's very tough to audit mom and pop trinket cash deal there. So this is not a penalty for other people, but it's just taking a look at the costs associated with putting on market days, and this is the revenue that we pay all our public works people and overtime and what have you.
Especially
through that.
events
May I
So-
ask you a question about marketplace and sales tax? Do you all get sales tax from
We're
those
doing
booths?
an audit, so we just started this spring requiring them to submit a sales tax. So when they sign up, so what Sam did is contacted all our current vendors that are reoccurring and gave them, 30 days to actually turn in the sales tax, or their sales tax permit, or their booth was going to be canceled. Any new people, that's a requirement in the application. You must submit your sales tax permit so that we can start doing auditing to ensure that they are collecting, and if they're collecting sales tax, that they're actually designating it to the city of Helotes
They
and
may
not
be
to San
collecting it,
Antonio.
but they may be sending it to Bernie, if they're a company from there. We don't know that they're submitting. It's very difficult, especially when it's small dollars like that. It doesn't pop up on our top 100 businesses, for example.
Yeah.
That type of deal. So this is an ongoing and a long-term project I've been working on the side and working with Tabby, she's no longer here tonight, to pull those reports. We've gotten reports from our largest ones, and that's something I referred to previously in some of our meetings with downtown and Old Town Helotes and for business development. But we need to audit that because we need to.
Ensure that we're getting.
We're holding it for a reason, right? We're
Yeah.
not doing this for charity, but
Yeah.
this is part of something that is building our community, but it's also, we can't run in a hole.
So we started we started requiring that in May. So now everybody that's at market has a sales tax permit, and then now that a quarter's gone by, we're asking the comptroller for an audit so that we can get that and make sure that they're paying it.
Good.
There's also a waiting list. I mean,
Constantly.
Constant. It's not like we're trying to
Yeah.
recruit.
No,
No,
yeah.
and like I said, we compare to other
Oh,
cities.
we could double it.
I think there's only one other vendor that it would be under this, and it's like $50 or $52. But we're at the market rate of these vendors, because a lot of them are 75, 100, 125 for space.
All right. Any other
Yes.
questions?
Yes, I do, sorry. So I
No.
want to talk about fee number W. It's on page 6. So the reason why I want to talk about this fee in particular is it's the protected tree removal permit. This is the permit that allows contractors to buy the permit of $80 there, $79.40, and then have the trees assessed on the property to see how much it'll cost them to cut the trees down. Okay? We've just seen comments, we've had people speak about having trees cut down. Is there I don't know how to word it, address this?
So this is, let's say you have and it specifically says there.
It does. It says
Diseased,
diseased,
dying,
dying,
dead. So if you have a dead tree and it needs to be removed, this is a permit and then we're talking about greater than 5 cal per inch.
Yep.
So, and our arborist will be a part of that to make sure
Sure.
that is in fact diseased and not somebody just coming out there and saying, it's diseased, so we need to remove it. We want to protect the trees that we need to protect, and that's part of why we're having
So
that permit.
the other fee also is once we
Once you identify the tree.
identify the trees, only so many can be cut down. The rest, there's a fee, what is the breakup, Josh?
Sorry.
So there's only protected trees if there's an active tree protection plan for the site. So once the tree plan ends based upon the development being built, and it becomes private property, then the protected status of that tree goes away. But if they pull a permit to remove a tree that is protected, then we charge $150 per cal per inch fee on top of that to mitigate that tree being removed.
But I mean, you're thinking of something like Brycewood, is that what you're
Well,
referring?
yeah, and then the developments that are coming along that.
So that goes on a completely different, that's a
Yeah.
different assessment, that's a tree mitigation plan.
And then understand too that the state law changed about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, that you can no longer penalize for the trees being removed off private property. So even if you had that tree protected and it's already an established
I
private
see.
property, the city actually can't
Got you.
really go in there and do anything about it.
Well, I tried.
So, but importance on developments, that's where each cal per inch is counted, determined, and you're only allowed to cut down so many.
Right.
And you have to pay to have them not just pay to have them cut down, but there's mitigation. And if you have to remove more, they have to be planted elsewhere in the city, so it's a net even. And all the things that we've gone through with,
Gotcha.
for example.
I remember.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there was some way in the fee schedule to help-
Discourage?
Yeah, good word. Discourage, the removal of trees.
Yeah, not with a developer.
So,
Well,
Try to.
Yeah, we tried through with the mitigation plan, with everything else, requiring so much needs to be planted back
Well, I
onto
mean,
the
I
property and so
wouldn't be
forth.
against like increasing the fee of whatever the 100, what is it, 150 per inch? I mean, we could double that and I'd be okay with it.
It's actually goes up to 500 if it's done without.
But the tree is still gone.
Yeah.
You can't replace, that kind of tree. Yeah, they can put another tree there, but it's not gonna be that tree.
well, what do you do?
Financial disincentive, that's where I'm going after here.
Well, yeah, until you, well, anyways, there's a lot of case studies, one way or the other, you could do extremes one way or the other, but that's why we have the overall tree mitigation program.
The majority of these permits are not for commercial people, they're for residents
Residential.
who have a tree that
Gotcha.
they want to take out in their yard. So increasing this fee, I don't think will accomplish what you're trying to accomplish.
So
I need more
lightning
direction.
strikes the tree that's in front of your house and
Got
it's
it.
killed it, do you really want to have to pay $500
No.
for a permit to remove a dead tree?
No.
And that's what.
That doesn't make sense, and I don't want to penalize anybody, but especially not a homeowner who has a dead
All
tree.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions,
Okay.
concerns on the fees? Okay.
No action is required on that, so there is no executive session this evening. So therefore, we are going to adjourn. The time is 9:25.